the proper mechanic. Because actually this morning I had to get a truck smogged. So I was at a friend, he's a friend. I mean, he's good, but his shop is built in with like a whole bunch of other shops. And he had this piece of junk, old Saturn there. And the timing belt tensioner failed and the timing belt jumped time and stuff. So when he's going to do this job, let's say that you had to do a timing belt on a car, how would you how would you prepare? How would you go about it? Anybody who's done any sort of work like that, give me the first step. What you gonna do?
You got to do some research on what you need. But if you got TIS, it's pretty easy.
All right. So I totally agree with that. When we go to work on the car, you don't ever, it's not like the movies. Like you guys seen Fast and Furious, right? Oh, this car will decimate all with 10 grand from overnight parts in Japan. And then next thing you know, they're standing in the engine bay and they're like putting vinyl wrap on and putting turbos on and like maybe somewhere, but that's not how your life is going to go. Okay. I'm just letting you know. And it's not even just about the mods. It's like anytime you do a job, even if it's this timing belt, you're not just going to be like, oh, yeah, buddy, let's just go and just start working on it. Right. You don't have specs, you don't have procedures, you don't know information. You got to like take a big step back and start to get prepared. So I'll relate this to what happened down there. He was really good, but the thing was he was using like he had to piece together a timing belt kit because it was really hard to get. And it was like every single timing belt tensioner pulley had an adjustment on it. And it was really hard to understand. And he actually has access to all that and stuff. And he was like watching YouTube videos on how to do it. All right. So that does happen. Even professional technicians sometimes will watch YouTube videos, but you got to do research. And the negative of YouTube videos is anybody can say anything. Okay. And if you do what the YouTube video said and it fails and you go to court, you can't be like, well, I was watching on YouTube. Then be like, oh my gosh, that's no, that's not professional. Make sense? So it really should be referenced from service information. So now what he was doing, I understood. He did reference service info, but like it's kind of hard to understand service info. So he was kind of supplementing it with YouTube, and that's at his own risk. It's his shop. If it gets messed up, it's his problem, right? But I'll give you an example of another former student. They came in like first or second class, and they're like, they got a Miata. They bought a Miata used cheap, and I kind of said like, a Miata, really? Not knocking them, just saying like it was older. It was all painted with matte black paint. It looked like it had been through a war. And the reason they were buying the car is because the other car broke down and they kept, you know, showing up late to class and stuff. And it was like, hey, you got to get reliable transportation. So came up with a Miata that's been run through and had every single part taken apart 10 times. And I was like, well, this isn't going to go well. So sure enough, by like week two, it's like, hey, the clutch went bad. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, you can fix it. But if you're going to fix a clutch, you got to pull a transmission. And where are you going to do the work? He's like, I'm gonna do it in the driveway. With what tools? Well, I have a couple tools. Like I have a basic set from Harbor Freight. And I'm just thinking like, you're gonna pull a transmission on your back in the driveway and do a clutch when you're in your first class. And and my advice was like, look, if you want a good outcome, you got to have good preparations, right? If you want to make a good meal, you got to have good ingredients, you got to have good prep. If you want to, whatever, you name it, construct, you want to build a good house, you need to have plans, you need to do research, you need to have your material, you need to have stuff together, right? It's not like what probably your high school guidance counselor thought. Did they ask you, do you like to get your hands dirty? And you're like, yeah, like, cool, go work on cars. You don't just jump in a tub of grease and start slopping stuff around. You have to have your brain very much engaged, disciplined. There's a saying that one of our foremen say all the time: engage brain before hands. Cool. So as soon as these couple students were telling me like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this clutch, and I was like, uh, this isn't gonna go well. How do you guys think it went?
Pretty bad.
Horrible.
They
They
came
put
back to
it in
class
first.
and they came back to class the next day and they're like, "Oh, it's so hard and they're sore and they're late." And I'm like, "Well, what's up?" And they're like, "Well, we got it out and we couldn't line the clutch up and then we tried to put it back in, it wouldn't go in. We took it out, we put it in. We're not really sure what to do." And it's like, "Okay, okay. Back up, back up. You need to weigh the job out, okay? So if we were going to do that clutch again, I don't have the Mazda Miata here, but let's just say you wanted to do a clutch before you start the job, you have to know what you're getting into, right? And that's part of the proper procedures. So if we're going to do that, let's say we went with, let's make it an 86. Cool.
Did they have the alignment tool when they were
No,
installing the clutch? No? Oh
no,
my, no
no,
wonder.
no. And
That
that's what
makes
I'm
sense.
saying. They didn't have the correct tools, so they couldn't. There's just a lot of problems with how they went about it, right? Let's say you're going to do a clutch on a 2022 86. Let's even just say clutch, okay? So even as a professional technician, we need to look this stuff up. We need to know what you're getting into. We're going to follow the repair manual. Okay, so if we're going to do a clutch, we're going to probably do removal, inspection, installation. So let's start with removal. Now we're pulling this up on TIS. It's clutch unit, it's removal. It's talking about, necessary procedures, let it run and idle, set the clock. Some of these are a little bit silly, but I'm at least going to skim them. Oh, it's saying if the exhaust is hot, you're going to get burned. Heavy object exceeding the capacity of the transmission jack. Wait, we need a transmission jack? Do you have a transmission jack? I actually have one that's over there. So if I wanted to do this, so far I'm looking good. If you don't have a transmission jack, now you got to rethink this. Like, wait a minute, what am I going to do? You going to just bench press it? I mean, you could bench press it. I'm not saying I haven't bench pressed a transmission in a garage on my back before, but you're as soon as you're going about it in a bad way, what do you think the result's going to be? If you're going to try to make a meal and they're like, "Hey, preheat your oven," and you're like, "Oven? I don't have no oven." How you think that meal's going to turn out? You
No,
gonna cook it all over an open fire, or what you gonna do? You know, it'd be cool, but like when the recipe says use the oven, now you got to make a plan, a different plan, and a different plan, a different plan, right? So they're going over some of the safety stuff. Now they're talking about components removal. You got to take the transmission out. Okay, here are all the clutch parts. Interesting. It's telling you actually what the names are. So you got to even know about the system before you can do the job. You got to remove this, remove, 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 remove. Now, wait a minute. It didn't really tell you about removing the transmission. So you got to actually look something up slightly different, don't you? So if you want to research this, remove transmission. Do you think there's more than one step to removing the transmission? Because that's all it said, remove the transmission. So if you want to do that, we're probably going to need to think something different. It's probably not under the clutch. It's probably under the TL70 manual transmission. Here's the manual transmission assembly. Here's the transmission removal. Oh, I see. Similar setup, similar stuff, similar warnings. Oh, here we go. You're going to have 3 of these bolts, 8 of these clips, 3 of those bolts, 8 of those clips. How do you guys get clips out? Does anybody know?
there's a tool. It's like a screwdriver type thing
So
with
if
the
you don't
end
have
on
it,
it.
what do you do?
Pocket
Um,
screwdriver.
yeah, use a regular screwdriver.
Yeah, you
That's
could
it. Yep.
use a number of things, but this is the rule. If you don't use what it calls for, I don't really have an issue with that, but if you mess it up, now we got a big problem. All right. So if you say like I could use this or I could use this, I'm actually okay with you using this, but you got to train your hands to not cut it off. You got to just basically you're going to basically make this do what this does, except it's adjustable. So you kind of hook it under and pull it out. Yeah, you could use a screwdriver, all that stuff. But here's the lesson. I have to put my tools back. I have OCD. Here's the lesson though. If you screw it up and you're using the wrong tool, there's going to be hell to pay. How's that sound? Right? If you use a different tool and everything's fine, no problem. But if you're making some stuff up and you're doing some janky stuff and you break it and you damage it, now what are you doing? You're not just doing a clutch. What else are you doing?
You're gonna do a repair now.
All right, who's going to pay for those clips that are damaged? Hmm.
Probably the dealer or you. Probably coming out
Insert.
of your pay.
Not the customer. Customer's not going to pay.
Is
No,
that considered Z time?
I'm not sure actually.
An excavator. The Yaves is an excavator. The Bobcat one. Yeah, it was. Yeah, so it depends, but the customer's gonna be like, you didn't give it to me on the estimate. Remember how we did repair orders and estimates, right? You
Oh
did an
yeah.
estimate, you gave them a price, parts, labor. You didn't put clips on there because you didn't expect to need clips, bolts, things, stuff that gets damaged along the way. You can't just raise the price. Now, I'm not going to say sometimes it doesn't happen, but that's not what should be getting done. If you're doing it right, you give the customer a price, you do the job, and then you give them the job back. And if something goes wrong, you might have to stop. Like sometimes, be honest, these clips can be really brittle and you might like try really carefully to move them and they're just brittle and they just break. And you might be like, hey, some of these clips broke, you need some new clips. The clips can be expensive though, right? So on that first time when you're a little bit new, you may be like, oh, I broke $20 worth of clips and I explained it to the customer and the customer was like, okay, yeah, no problem. Or the customer will be like, well, you didn't put on the estimate, I'm not paying, at which point somebody has to pay for that. And it's not gonna be the customer, so it's gonna be like internal on the dealer, right? So now the dealer's kind of upset because they're making less money. So what would you do on the next one if you thought those clips might be brittle?
I would just kind of put it on the repair order already. Let
Yeah,
them know they
maybe
have to get.
build it into your quote, right? So sometimes things go wrong. Like if I look at a job and I'm like, man, this thing is beat up, it's rusty or whatever, I might be like, you know what? I think that bolt's going to break. I think those clips are going to break and stuff. I can add that to the repair order. That's legitimate, that's legal, but it's just when it happens after you gave the price, it gets a little tricky. Makes sense? And and you might be able to explain and get it covered. But then again, if nobody else breaks clips and you bust out your clip remover tools and you break all the clips all the time, they'd be like, hey, what's up with you, man? Like nobody else breaks the clips. You're the only one who breaks the clips. You got to do something different. You'd be like, well, this is how I do it. I stab at them. Yeah. And then, once in a while they break. Well, that's because you're doing it wrong. And that to me is how I know you're doing it wrong. If you're damaging them, you're doing it wrong. If you're damaging them more than the average technician, you're doing it wrong. But if you have a way of using this screwdriver and those clips come out and you don't damage them any more than the average technician, that's fine. Actually, that's legit. If it works for the customer, it doesn't damage it, then fine. I'm good with it. All right. So
So
we're only on the clips. All we've done is pull the covers and you can see how this can go bad already. So it talks about some of the things to do. You got to remove a drive shaft. Do you know what happens if you put the car in park and you remove a drive shaft
It rolls
on
forward.
on a hill? There's no park no longer exists. But this was a manual, so this wouldn't happen, right? But just so you all know, park exists in an automatic transmission and it locks the drive shaft, which is bolted to the wheels. If you take the drive shaft out, there's no park. That thing is rolling.
you
See,
can't remove the you can't remove the transmission in park because you have to spin. If it's automatic transmission, you have to spin the flywheel to be able to get the bolts. But I see what you're saying.
yeah. So the kind of the thing being like, if you didn't know about automotive though, you wouldn't probably be able to just jump right in and start doing this work, right? To
Gotcha.
really do a job, you got to have like an overall scope of, well, what happens when I remove that drive shaft? What happens if it's an automatic and I need to get the torque converter bolts out? Or like you got to know the overall fundamentals first.
Chalking the
Then
wheels would be good.
chalking the wheels would be good. Or better yet, if it's on a lift, you put it up on the lift, it's not going to roll because it's off the ground. But if you're in the driveway, you got new issues, right? So you can't really go about doing a job like this unless you know the fundamentals, right? And then in addition to the fundamentals, you got to have access to the service manual to properly execute it. Now, I'm not going to say you couldn't figure it out, but it's just not the right way to go about it. You're going to it wouldn't hold up in court. I could tell you that right now. Now, if you're a DIY mechanic and you're like, well, I was fixing my own car and I ran myself over, you got nobody to sue. You're going to sue yourself, right? But when you're a professional, you it's expected you do things in a professional way. And that's what we're trying to show you here today. Right? So now you get into it talks about a lot of this type of stuff. It tells you how many bolts, tells you what brackets, it tells you all about all the stuff you're about to get into. Now you notice it doesn't tell you sizes though. That'd be kind of cool. It'd be like, oh, this is a 12, these are 14s, but it at least shows you the parts explosion. And then it gets into the specifics, right? Remove the number one engine cover. So if we click on this, it pops up another window. Cool. Here's the engine cover. Bolts and clips and stuff and things. Muffler, cover, exhaust pipe, exhaust hangers. Now you notice it doesn't exactly tell you how to remove an exhaust hanger. So you kind of have to know how to get that out. And there's several different ways. They actually make special pliers for that. I don't own the special pliers. The way I do it, I put a little bit of lubricant, WD-40, for example, and then I'll shove my power bar up in here and I'll pull over to the like kind of upward and it'll pop it right out. And it doesn't rip the rubber and it doesn't hurt it. So I don't want to buy the special tool because special tool costs money. And every tool that I buy means I can't spend the money I made on other stuff. I'm reinvesting it. Now, reinvesting it's good, but if my pry bar works just as well for me, I'm not going to buy the special exhaust hanger pliers. Although, if the exhaust hanger pliers were to save me enough time to be worth it for themselves, then I would. Then I would get that. Right. So this is running through a lot of the steps. So you got to jump on that side menu of different items. Then I think this should jump me back, but let's see. I got to pull this over the side so I can see a little better. Click there, here, get back down. Undercut, engine number 2 cover. This cover, that cover, drain the manual transmission oil. Now hold up. Why would I drain it? Anybody want to make a point here? Tells
It'll
you
spill. It'll make a big mess while you're removing it.
Just to make it lighter.
it's kind of like it depends on what we're going to do. So if that transmission was good and we were going to do a clutch, technically you don't have to drain this fluid. Why do you think that TIS tells you to drain this fluid?
I think you should replace it since you're already there.
But then we should put it on the repair order. We should be like, hey, we're gonna do the clutch, but also we're gonna change your transmission
To
fluid.
check
Right?
if there's
Yes.
any metal shavings.
And that's the thing is there's a lot of unseen, unspoken reasons, but if technically all we're doing is a clutch, we don't need to drain this fluid. When you pull the transmission out, it's fairly sealed. Now, when you tip it down and the drive shaft's out, some fluid can come out of that,
The
like where
rear.
the drive shaft goes, that rear
Yeah.
output shaft seal. That's true. It could, so I'm getting all these points, but
You
you got
technically don't.
well, it depends. I mean, you just got to understand TIS is going to tell you to do these things, and then you're not a robot, right? You got to
No.
think like, well, all right, should I or should I not? And then if you were to say, well, you know what, I should change the fluid to check for metal shavings, I should change the fluid because it's due, all those were good points. But if you're going to put new oil in there, somebody's got to pay for that. And you can't just be like, well, I didn't put it on the estimate, but you're going to charge them on the way out the door. You can be like, oh, by the way, it was an extra $50 because I had to change your fluid. And they'll be like, why didn't you tell me that when you started the job? Right. So before you start the job, before you price the job, I'd probably skim this and be like, oh, they're calling to drain the oil. Do I want to not drain the oil? Or to save them money? Or do I want to drain the oil, in which case I need to add that into the cost, right? Either way is fine. If the oil should be changed though, because it's, been 60,000 miles or something, well, then you should probably change it, and how would we know the oil should be changed? Well, you'd have to really look at that maintenance interval. Remember we looked at the maintenance manual to show when the transmission fluid should be done and stuff. Well, I haven't looked at that for this car. We didn't even come up with the miles this car has. But again, I'll give you a quote. You might not know where it came from. You gotta have your wits about you, right? You gotta have your wits about you. You gotta be thinking about what you're doing. It's not like your high school counselor said. You don't just jump in and get your hands dirty. You're at a point right here and you're like, do I change the oil? Do I not change the oil? You gotta think about it. You gotta be paying attention. You gotta know, like, yes, no, why yes, why no, right? Okay. And that's just something simple like the transmission fluid level. Then as we go lower, there's a lot of steps on here. And the more steps you realize, the more steps you do, the more you realize you're going to have parts all over the place. So if you were to do this job in the driveway, where are you putting these parts? You know what I mean? For real.
Probably on the ground, yeah.
On the ground, they're rolling in the dirt. And then the problem was you're doing it in the driveway and it took you too long and you got tired and then you had to work the next day. And
Oh
then
no, they forgot.
the gardener comes the day after and mows the lawn and the bolts get stuck in the weed whacker and the lawnmower and and all this, like this is not this whole way we went about this job in the driveway is a recipe for disaster. Could you all at least agree with that? But your high school counselor said just jump in there and get your hands dirty, huh? That's what they said. You like get your hands dirty? Well, yeah, you can get your hands dirty. Go dig in the dirt. Just put your hands in the dirt then. Or if you want to do like greasy mechanical stuff, there's some jobs that do that, but fixing a car that's not really what we're doing. So how you want to organize these parts?
You could use a board box.
In the order that you took them
Name
out
it.
from?
All right, I got a couple options for me. This is my parts tray. It's magnetic. What I like to do, I'll start right up here. Come on, fuzzy background. I'll start right here. That's the first one. And like, let's say that first component was the trays, right? Was the covers. This will be the first cover, second cover, third cover. Then maybe we get into exhaust. If this isn't big enough for exhaust, maybe I do this one for exhaust. And then maybe I do this one for the transmission drain plug, right? And I keep it organized. I go like this, just like how you'd write top left, drop down a line, drop down a line. Cool. And I'll keep all my parts organized in an order. Okay. Or if you're working under hood, I like these. This is a grip mat. These are nice because they're flexible. You can put them anywhere, right? But I actually prefer the magnetic one because the stuff will stick to a little bit better. So you gotta think about how you're gonna go about this, how you're gonna organize it. Now, the other thing that I would do, remember we pulled those covers? I would try to make a spot where I could put some stuff. So one thing I would knock on a couple of those dealers is like, man, they're just taking parts off and throw them on the floor. And it's dirty. Like, I'm not trying to judge or anything, but if that was my car and I was making a big monthly payment, or if I'm not making a monthly payment and I bought it cash, that meant I saved my money and I sacrificed for years to buy that car. And I go in and there's all my parts are chucked in a pile. Like those plastic covers are getting all scratched up and the drive shafts on top of them, like, nah, I'm not down. I'm not cool. There's a reason why customers are typically not allowed back in the shop. Now, when we looked at Longo Lexus with the glass window, do you notice there were parts slopped all over the place? Like a hurricane, like the Tasmanian devil working on it? That's a character or is it too old?
Yeah, no, but no, I didn't see a lot of parts.
Yeah, so that's kind of the thing. When I was younger, I was pretty notorious for just throwing stuff all over the place, but like the problem was that hurts you a little bit. Like when you go to put it back together and you're wasting your time and you're looking, you're not sure where the stuff is, you're trying one thing and then you're undoing it and whatever. That costs you money when you're a flat rate tech. So all of a sudden you start thinking about how can I smooth this out? How can I streamline this, right? So when I'm organizing my parts, top to bottom, top left to the right, drop a line to the right, drop. When I organize my parts, I do the same thing. The first parts I'll take in, let's say ideally it's on a bench, okay, but sometimes we don't always have enough bench space. But if it had to go on the ground, so be it. But I wouldn't be throwing it in a big old pile, at least, okay? But if I were to put it first part, left, next part to the right of that, next part to the right of that, when I'm all done and I'm ready to reassemble, can you see how that would help me know which order to put it back in, keep things organized, save me time on the reassembly? Couldn't you kind of see that? But look, it doesn't say that in the service manual. Service manager doesn't teach you that. So that's our job. And the fundamentals of how to be a technician and to be a mechanic, if you will, you got to know some stuff, right? You got to know some overall stuff. Cool. So this is going to get you step by step by step by step. If you roll up to it and you just start ripping and tearing, you may be taking the wrong things off the car. And if you're working on something that shouldn't come off, that's not good. Like we want our work to be as least invasive as possible. The fewer bolts you take off, the less parts you disturb, the less problems, the less exposed you are to having a bolt break or a part get messed up or damage, right? So it's kind of like if you had a surgery. Let's say if I had to have a surgery, let's say one surgeon's like, oh yeah, I can fix that. We're going to cut this open, cut the muscle, peel it all back and go in and fix it. And I'm like, what's the recovery time? And they're like 6 months. Then another one's like, you know what we'll do? We'll poke 2 holes right here. We'll send our camera in and we'll do it all, through the camera. And there's just going to be 2 little scars, a lot less stuff to go wrong. They don't have to cut the muscle and the recovery time's 2 weeks. I'm going with that one. Makes sense. That's more what the customer wants. We're not trying to work on a bunch of stuff we don't need to. You only really go in, do what you need to do, and get out. You don't like to make big projects out of small projects. Okay, cool. Because if you make a big project out of it, you got to bill for it. And the customer doesn't want to pay that bill. I don't want to pay that bill. Nobody wants to pay that bill. Okay. And then, we could pick any number of jobs and it's going to give you, oh, you know what you actually have to do this 86 to do that clutch properly. You got to support the engine. Oh, good luck in the driveway. And it's going to call for an engine support bar. There's a lot of stuff that goes into doing a job, but if you don't review it, you don't really know. And that was really just on pulling the transmission. Then when you actually get into doing the clutch, jump back on clutch unit, there's an inspection procedure. This is going to justify some of the things we do in the rest of the semester. It's actually talking about using a vernier caliper, measuring the springs, measuring the clutch thickness, sometimes clutch depth, talking about using a dial indicator. A lot of times you can measure the disc run out, the flywheel run out, or you can just assume it's good because it's new, but that's not always the case. Like a brand new part can still have issues. Make sense? So to do a lot of this type of work, you have to know how to do some measurement, some precision measurement using various different tools. So just to really do a clutch, you need to know a lot of stuff about measuring too. Okay, makes sense. And so this is the professional way. This isn't the backyard mechanic where you just throw the parts in and if it's got an issue, you take another shotgun guess. Make sense? All right, so even visual inspection, you got to know what to look for. Checking the bearing. Is it loose? Is it smooth? Sometimes we'll check these parts for wear. Cool. When we go to install the clutch, look at this. It's calling for the parts. What do these little boxes mean? What are those little boxes?
Torque spec.
Exactly. So again, when we go to work on this, you don't just go wild with your impact gun. Like this is my favorite. Here it is. Right? Just pow. Pow. Like I get that's fast, but especially with a clutch, it's really critical that we torque stuff. There's actually a sequence of torque. You don't just run it and send it. All right. There's some stuff there. Cool. So when we do this work, you have to know the torque specs. You have to torque it in a certain procedure and et cetera. And this will get in and I didn't skim this. We just made this up on the spot. Oh, here's the alignment tool. It's an SST. What SST? 09301-00110. Do you have it? No, then you probably shouldn't proceed. Or do you have an aftermarket equivalent? Yes, good to go. If you don't have anything, you're not ready to do the job, right? There's a reason why you can't find people to do this work that cheap. It doesn't take a cheap, unskilled labor mentality. Like you got to know some stuff to do this. You got to have tools, you got to have equipment, you got to have facility to really have this turn out right. Even if somebody said they do a clutch in the driveway for $100, I'm not letting them touch my car because they can do a whole lot of damage. a lot more damage than I'm saving. Makes sense? So like, no, no, no. Cool. When we do this, it's talking about making some marks. It's talking about, here's the sequence. Ready? Number one, straight across number two, almost across number three, straight across number four, almost across number five, straight across number six. That's the sequence. If you ran it in a circle and you did 1, 6, 4, 2, 5, 3, that's that clutch disc was not drawn up real square. You're gonna have some potentially some issues. It may be it may be a little bit more squeezed on the 1, 6, 4 because you did those first. Make sense? Like it's just not the right way to do it. So there's a sequence, there's a procedure. It talks about where to grease different grease points here, 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 here. And this clip is one-time use. You need to replace that clip. You need to grease these points and it's a lot of times a special type of grease on the spline and on the sleeve where the release bearing throws, right? Install all that stuff. Oh, and then all you got to do is just reinstall the whole manual transmission. No big deal, right? And so when you get into that, again, torque specs on the transmission, torque spec, gear, gear oil. It calls for a specific type of gear oil. To do this job, there's a lot of research, a lot of knowledge, a lot of specs. There's a lot of information required. It is not fast and furious slapping stickers and ordering parts from Japan. And then half hour later, you're out there, bing, bang, bow, ring, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bow, VTEC, VTEC. It's not, nope, nope. That's what it is in the movies. But in reality, if you're not happy with doing a lot of research, understanding these specs, and then going out and executing it, doing it how it's called to do, which is sometimes physical, hot weather in the sun, in a hot underground shop or whatever, like this ain't it then. This isn't for you. Might I suggest social media influencer? You could be a social media influencer and you could influence people. I don't exactly totally understand what that means, but I don't even really know what they do, but I know what this job is. I know exactly what this job entails. And it's awesome if this is what you want to do. And if it's not, well, then it's not. All right. So that was just one example. So when the student told me, oh, yeah, we're going to go knock out a clutch on the Miata after school. And I was like, right. Okay. I already knew how that was going to go. I already knew. Now you understand how I knew? Because if you look at all the steps and the tools and the procedures and the amount of expertise that's going to be needed. And by the way, if you change a flywheel, they call for putting something on the bolts. Can you guess what it is?
Is it blue
Loctite.
lock?
Brad Locker.
Yeah, if you don't have it, you're not really doing it right. Makes sense? Now, could you run it down with a little, put it on number 3?
Hell
Maybe.
no.
I don't know. Can you warranty that? No, if something goes wrong, that's on you. You know what I'm saying? So doing the work, I'm gonna tell you, it's not exactly rocket science, but like it's definitely not what people think this industry is, where you just jump in, you start working on stuff. Cool. So hopefully that helps to set expectations. We just picked one random job. I mean, you could pick a number of different things. Even for example, if it was just going to be an oil change, I'm thinking about where that would even be. Probably under maintenance, probably under oil and filter, probably under replacement. All right, it's saying remove these 3 bolts, no big deal. Remove the oil filter cap, remove the drain plug and gasket, drain the oil into a container, clean the oil and drain plug, new gasket. Do you have a drain plug gasket? If you don't have a drain plug gasket, you shouldn't be starting the job. Make sense? Install the drain plug, torque to how much?
41 Newton meters.
Man, give that to me in American language.
31 foot-pounds of torque, baby.
Thank you very much. Give it to me always in freedom units. All right. And then, using an SST, remove the oil filter subassembly. Say what? You got that SST? What's it look like? Well, actually, that one I'm not familiar with.
It might be the same as the Toyota Tacoma. I just did an oil change on my father-in-law's truck. Yes. Oh no,
Yeah.
it was different. It
It's
was different
probably
than
not
that.
gonna be this though.
No, it was different than that one.
This would be good for a spin on, which I just did. Right? If the filter's like this, a spin on, this is a
Oh
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
But I don't know exactly what that one is. On the Subaru, I think it might be a spin on, but I'm not positive.
I think it's just a specific uh socket for
But
the spin on. But I'm pretty sure you could
otherwise,
use any one of those.
Or a
tools.
cartridge type.
yeah, if it's a cartridge, what do you guys need to use on that?
It's a cup filter. I mean,
Orange.
you just put like a cup adapter on it. Yeah, one of those.
Yeah, something like this. This one's not even Toyota brand.
Yeah, that's the one I have
Yeah.
when I do the oil on my truck. Something similar to that.
That's the one I used too, just to change it. Just yesterday, same thing.
Yep. And so just something as simple as an oil change, you got to do some research. You got to remember, engage brain before hands. Think about what you're going to do. Think about that drain plug gasket. Think about how you can get the oil filter. Make sure you got the right oil filter, the drain plug gasket, the correct amount of oil. How much oil? Well, we could look that up, right? And so then it gives you the steps. It tells you to torque the oil filter 10 foot-pounds. Or if not enough space available to use a torque wrench, tighten the oil filter subassembly 3/4 of a hand, 3/4 of a turn by hand using a common wrench. So that means you're basically going to thread it up till it touches and then go 3/4 of a turn, right? So it's being specific. And then what you'd use for oil, 0W20, and it's specifying it's ILSAC GF5. And the capacity, drain and refill with oil filter change, 5.3 quarts. Without filter change, which you wouldn't do as an oil change service, but let's say you had to drain the engine oil to do an oil pan and then put the oil pan back on, but it wasn't due for an oil change. You might actually do it without the filter, but it'd be pretty pretty unlikely. 5.1 quarts. If it's a brand new engine and it's never had oil in it, 6.2 quarts, right? So it's giving you the specs. If you guys Google how much oil does a 2022 Subaru 86, Toyota 86 take, it's not going to give you this. It's just going to tell you 5.1 quarts. I mean, so Google is not going to give you all the information you need, right? So we're going to go by something that's sourced and referenced. Now, what do you think the likeliness of this number being published wrong in the service manual is?
Pretty
Not
low.
likely.
Not likely, because remember, Toyota can change this on the spot at any point and any time. So if they ever found that there was an error, trust me, it's fixed long before you see it. Your likeliness of finding that error is it's just not going to happen. Cool. So this is legit. Now, if somebody posted something on a forum and they were wrong, like that can live on, live on, live on. They can give the wrong information to a million people and they're not liable for it. Make sense? So even if we were to do something simple like tire rotation, it's gonna give you a spec. It's gonna tell you how to rotate it, but it's also gonna give you torque specs. 89 foot-pounds, I believe, is what we need. See, it says kilogram feet, Newton meters, kilogram feet, foot-pounds. Newton meters is 120, 1224 kilogram feet, or 89 foot-pounds, right? So I usually look at the third number. Foot-pounds is what I'm after. Freedom units. Cool. And this one actually doesn't say it, but when we get into tools and torque a little bit after break, it's going to show you, we are supposed to really torque this in a sequence. It's a star pattern. You guys probably heard of that. Cool. So that should give you a good view of a proper procedure. Because if you'll recall, this was all about torque and proper procedures. To properly do the procedure, you need the torque, you need the specs, you need to do the research, you need the special tools, you need X, Y, and Z equipment. You just need to be prepared, right? And you get all that information from service info. Cool. If anybody wanted to think of anything else you wanted to look up, we could. We could even get really into how you'd price the job. There's several different ways, but you'd need to get the labor time, etc. That's proper procedure. You don't just tell somebody, oh yeah, I don't know how much it's going to cost, but I'll start doing it and then I'll give you the bill after. That's not how you do business. Not how you're supposed to do business anyway. All right. So like if you were to go resource information. I think it's warranty and claim. Let's just see what we could do with a clutch. Ooh, it changed the model to all though. Here we go. Flat rate manual. And that's another thing. A lot of times they look to us to give them an estimate, whatever, pick up whatever production date or model code it is. Alrighty, repair clutch, transmission, drive shaft. Clutch cover is pretty much it. Clutch cover subassembly with pilot bearing. Let's see. Including R&R transmission. So see this number right here? That's clutch cover, including clutch disc. 3.6. So there's your labor time. Now, typically, this is warranty labor time. So if you're doing it under warranty, it's going to be 3.6 hours and you're going to do it with this labor op code, right? But if you're going to do customer pay, you can use this as a baseline. And if you were to look it up in the book, all data or whatever, it's probably going to be like 1.5 times. So what's 3.6 times 1.5? Let's figure that out. 3.6 times 1.5. I bet you that'll get us really close. 3.6 times 1.5. Most likely that job's gonna be 5.4. So it's not a real well-paying job. They're expecting you as a flat rate technician to be able to do that in 5.4 hours. You don't get to be taking breaks and hanging out and watching YouTube and goofing off. If you're gonna do that clutch in 5.4, you're gonna be probably working for it. If you're good at it, you could be able to do a little quicker. If you're gonna do the fluid, you might add a little bit of time. If you're gonna fix a rear main or do some other work, you might add a little bit of time, but you're not gonna get paid 20 hours to do a clutch. It's just not gonna happen. It's not worth that. Okay. So that's your main lesson right there. If you guys got any questions related to that, now would be a good time. You guys can let me know. John, go ahead.
So when it comes to the estimate, let's say that the ball bearing or the pilot bearing goes bad,
Yeah.
you would just add that in afterward, or
Actually, you make a really good point. So if you're
yeah.
going to go in to do a clutch disc, honestly, as a professional technician, I would say absolutely not. What do you have to do the clutch disc? You got to remove the transmission. If it had this radial ball bearing for clutch release, that's a lot of times called like the pilot bearing or the
Mhm.
throwout bearing. I wouldn't see how it says 3.3. That's if you're going to go in and just do that. So if it were
Okay.
me as a professional technician looking out for the best interest of the customer, I'd say, you know what? You need a whole clutch kit. We're going to do the disc, the cover, the pilot bearing, and the release bearing. And you might bump it up just a little bit because the clutch disc doesn't include the pilot, but let's say clutch cover subassembly including R&R tread, they're having you add a 0.1. If you're going to do the pilot bearing, they're having you add a 0.2.
Mhm.
So overall, you could probably go with like the 3.6 plus 0.2. So 3.8, 3.9. You could do like maybe a 4.1 if you did those bearings in addition to.
So it would be a safe bet to just add that into the RO.
I absolutely would. And that would be part of my estimate. And if the customer to say, well, I only want the clutch disc, I would just explain to them like, I have to do 3+ hours, 4 hours worth of work to do this part.
Mhm.
You're only going to be paying an additional 0.1 or a point, let's say the pilot. Yeah, you're only going to be paying an additional 0.2 in labor to do the pilot bearing. Now would be a good time. That pilot bearing's cheap. It's $20. It's
Yeah.
0.2 hours. And if you decline, no problem. But if your pilot bearing fails in the next, however, whenever it fails, it's not covered. Make sense?
Okay.
If you just
Mhm.
do the disc is covered, the disc is new. If there's a bunch of older parts in there, no, it doesn't really make sense. Like a good technician is going to say, we're going to do this kit, especially because you can buy a clutch kit with all those parts included.
Mhm.
So some of that comes with experience, like Like the school of hard knocks, kind of like, yeah, I did a clutch and then 6 months later the release bearing failed and I had to do it again. I pulled the transmission out a second time. It's like, why did I do that? I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that ever again. Kind of
Mhm.
similar water pump and timing belt. If you're going to do a water pump and it is timing belt driven style water pump, you're probably going to do the timing belt at that time. If you're going to
Sure.
go in to do the timing belt and you're going to stare at the water pump and you're 6 bolts away from that water pump coming out, but you leave it in there and that water pump fails in 6 months, you got to go back to the customer and say, hey, we got to charge you 6 hours worth of labor rather than we were going to just do it for half an hour, but
Mhm.
instead we're going to do it for six, you know? So being a good steward of the customer's money is the way that I like to think of it. And, you know, I just don't want the car to come back. I don't want the customer unhappy. I'd rather give them a price, including these little details that are going to be money well spent. And then when they get it back, like, oh, everything's great. Thank you. I'm going to recommend you rather than like, well, how come you didn't tell me I should have changed that bearing while I was in there? You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
try to think of it like that.
Okay.
Very, very good question. Anybody else got some more?
Back with the repair, I remember you were talking about clips, and and
Sure.
then you were talking about like specific things that would break. When you
Yeah.
put in the repair order, does that automatically do they tell the customer that do they charge the customer more, or how does that work?
Yeah, so let's say you did it clean, right?
Yeah.
If you went, the car comes in, it needs an estimate. So let's just say, the customer states, you know, I feel like my transmission slipping, check and advise. You drive it, you diagnose it because you have foundational understanding. You diagnose it as a clutch. And you're like, you inspect it as part of your diagnosis. And you see, ooh, those clips look rough. You know, I want to sell the clutch replacement with the clutch kit, including those other bearings, right? But also add in these clips. You know, so um, you got to basically be the one making the decisions. Now, the service advisor is the one to call the customer, but you got to specify to the service advisor, you know, probably in writing, hey, the clutch is this, the kit is that, the labor is this, but add this much for these clips or for this transmission fluid change or whatever. You package it, and then the service advisor calls and said, hey, this is your estimate. It's for a clutch kit, clutch replacement labor, a transmission fluid change, and these replacement clips. And the customer may say, like, what do you mean the clip? What's wrong with the clips? And that's when, you know, you might have to tell the service advisor, they're plastic and they're brittle, and a lot of times they break. So we want to include it as part of the price. And if you really wanted to do it really nice, I'd say, and if they don't break, we won't charge you. But we want to start off with you knowing they could break. I don't want you blaming me because I think that they're going to break. And if you approve it and they break, everybody's happy. And if I get them out and they don't break, you know, maybe I'd probably change them anyway. But you know what I'm saying? I'd go about it just like that. Get the customer to know before you start the repair. It's always worse if they call back and they say, hey, you need to spend more money because some stuff broke. They think you did it out of negligence, you know? So that's how we really do it. But unfortunately, you guys can see it's not just, you
Yeah.
know, that
So,
part you get to do, but there's a lot of this type of stuff too.
so if you don't put a repair order, like let's say you see everything and you think it's fine, uh,
Yeah.
and then a bolt strips on you, does it you just lose like labor, like time and money, no?
It depends. That's very situational. So like if you are, let's just say I went to grab my 14 millimeter, but my tools are disorganized. I accidentally put a 15 on. The edges of the bolts are worn off. Why are the edges of the bolts worn off?
Not a proper fit.
Right, that's on me. So I'm gonna fix that. However, if I did the proper fitment and that bolt was really rusty and it seemed like it was tight, and I try to stop and I try to spray it with a little PB blaster or something, I try to work it or whatever, and unfortunately I just can't save it. No, that doesn't necessarily fall on you. You might have to go to the service advisor and say, hey, we need to call the customer, let them know, you know, they live at the beach, the car was rusty, unfortunately this bolt broke, we did what we could to save it, right? But better yet, if you were to stop when you hit that bolt and you're like, this bolt's not moving, I would have probably went to the service advisor and said, hey, call the customer, this bolt may break. If they're not okay with paying the extra time for me to fix the bolt, then we should stop the job right now. Right. But sometimes you can't do it quite like that. You think you got it and then boom, it's broken or stripped or whatever. No, you can go and renegotiate. You're perfectly reasonable to go renegotiate and say, I thought the bolt was okay and then it broke, but it's going to be X, Y, and Z to fix. And the customer may be like, oh, why? How come? It sucks. It's horrible. But like one thing I've learned over the years is like, it's the customer's car. All we can do is try to do the best service we can, but we don't bear the full responsibility of anything and everything that happens to the car. And I learned that at a dealer because we had a customer that kept coming back and like everything that went wrong, they would blame on the previous thing. So like they came in, I'll make it silly. Like they came in to have their tire pressure set. And after we set the tire pressure a week later, the AC started blowing warm. And they're like, well, ever since you set the tire pressure, now my AC doesn't work. It must have been something you did, right? It was this type of thing. And this customer came back several times and, was always just blaming. And I specifically remember it wasn't even the service manager, service director. It was a guy from corporate, like the regional service director, because this was such a problem customer. And he sat this customer down and I overheard it, pulled out a calendar, set it down and said, at what point does this car become your responsibility? And this customer was like, what? They're like, look, everything that goes wrong, you blame us for, but this is your car. This is the car you drive. We're going to do the best we can to fix it, whatever. But, cars fail, they break, stuff happens. It's your car. It's not our car. It's your car. So you could pick any date on this month that you want, write the date in. And after that point, it's your car and you have to pay for the repair. So like that was kind of harsh, but this customer was a pain in the butt. I mean, if a bolt breaks and we've done the best we can, that's all we can do. Really, the customer needs to pay for that. But we should not be like breaking stuff, tightening it. A bolt may break that's rusted when we're loosening it. Makes sense? If we're loosening it and it breaks, different discussion. If you're tightening it and it breaks, something was wrong. You did something wrong. That one's on you. Make sense? Same with lug nuts. If I break a lug nut coming off, I'm going to stop and be like, hey, this was stripped from the last people that worked on it or whatever. And maybe be like, oh, that was us. Whoops, sorry about that. And they'll just fix it. But at that point, they should pay me to fix it because it was coming off. Whereas if I got it off and then I broke it going back on, that's you ain't going to get paid for that. They know you did it. Cool. Makes sense?
Yes.
Very good. All right, you guys, if you don't have any more questions, this would be probably a pretty good time to pause. John, go ahead.
Kind of going back to the manual transmission, removal, everything about that.
Sure.
Would you also put in a rear main seal to that repair order too?
I would consider it depends on like the year, if it's pretty new, I'd still probably offer it to them.
Mhm.
If I offer it to them and say, hey, if you want, we can do a rear main because it's only an extra half an hour or whatever, I think
Mhm.
that'd be a good option.
Okay.
But I've seen cars that have 1,000 miles on them and the person didn't know how to drive a manual and they just smolder the clutch and the clutch is wasted.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't, again, a little bit of a case by case. I wouldn't
Mhm.
say every single time is a good answer, but I'd say if it makes sense and the customer wants it, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Any more? Any more? All right, and it sounds like we're in a good spot, so I'm going to go ahead and do a pause. All right, you guys, we're back. And this part, presented by Snap-on. It's actually more torque, right? But Snap-on did it, and I think it's the best one out there. It explains from a really understandable point and also kind of like how it's evolved. All right, so speaking of Snap-on tools, you guys will see why this is presented by Snap-on because they made the original torque wrench, or at least the original ratchet that was a torque wrench. All right, so let's talk about it. Who knows what torque is? Anybody? Anybody care to guess what's on the next page? The definition?
Rotational force.
Oh, way off, dude. It's a twisting or wrenching effect exerted by a force acting at a distance on a body equal to the force multiplied by the perpendicular distance between a line of action of the force and the center of rotation is which it exerted. duh, dude. Like, duh. Like, yeah, rotational force. Very, very well said. Very well said. So when we say torque, now you guys understand it could be engine torque, but mostly from this standpoint, we're going to talk about like how much torque you apply to a fastener. Fastener could mean a lot of different things too. So let's say a bolt. Let's say the drain plug. How tight should you make the drain plug? Tight's tight and too tight's broke. Good and tight. Snug it up. Hand tight. Finger tight.
Torque
With the
spec.
manual.
Torque to spec. Yeah. So now that you guys understand the perspective, you're going to reference the service manual. You're going to get a spec, and getting the spec is only half of it. Then you got to actually torque it to the spec. And so torque to spec would be a great answer. All right, but why? So I like the story way back in the day. You know, we weren't really using torque wrenches. We're just kind of like tighten it up, and if it's not tight enough, it'll just vibrate and fall out, or if it's too tight, it'll break off. But we're working more and more with finer, delicate things, different types of materials, aluminum, sometimes one metal and another metal, a lot of plastic and composites. You got to really have this to spec. That's what they mean when they say exotic, right? So, like for example, lug nuts, drain plugs, cylinder heads, really every bolt or nut on the car actually has a torque spec. Now, finding the torque spec on some of those more abstract fasteners can be really difficult, but actually, usually buried in the service manual, it'll specify if there's no specific torque spec, you revert back to universal torque specs that are based on the bolt size. All right, so actually, I want to pause this for 1 second and I'll show you exactly what I'm saying.
That
Although
activity was on unit packet 4, I think. I did something like this. I'm not sure.
exactly, and you can dig it out and you can actually find where it says that. So I would say it's most likely on TIS, but it might be quicker for me to Google it. All right, so we could even potentially find a universal chart. All right, so if I were to open this up in a new page, oops, I didn't mean to actually click the link, but actually it looks like it's going to work probably fairly well. Let me see if I can pull this up. All right, an M6 by 1.0. That's actually a pretty common size. They're calling for 15 Newton meters. I was trying to get in foot pounds, but it's fine. You can still see. If it's an M8 by 125, 35 foot pounds. If it's an M10 by 1.5, well, it kind of depends on the size, but it could be somewhere 35, it could be 70, 62. So either way, 62 to 70 is a pretty small range, right? So this is just showing if you can tell the bolt size, you can actually come up with like a universal torque. But obviously you wouldn't do this if you can find the exact spec, okay? The point of that being every bolt on the car has a torque spec. It's just some are easier to find than others, okay? I'm the first one to admit that. Cool. So a brief history, and this is the part I kind of like. Archimedes came up with it. This came about in 1918. There's a little fella. I actually don't know what size he was, but I'm gonna say there was a little fella, and he worked for the New York City Water Department. Okay, this part is not necessarily true. It's based on a true story, but I had to change some things to make it fun. This little fella Conrad worked with a bunch of big, strong Chongo gorillas and stuff. And so they'd, those big boys would go down in the sewer and they'd be bolting those pipes up, right? And those pipes would be a bunch of flanges, right? So it's like a flange with a bunch of bolts in it. So these big boys would go down there and they'd tighten it up. Now, some of you are bigger than others. Pick the biggest, strongest person in the class, send them down there and tighten up those bolts. Then you said Conrad down there and say, hey, Conrad, we need to change out that section of pipe. and you need to unbolt those bolts. Conrad gets down there, like, who the heck tightened this? Who tightened it? Maybe, let me think about my answer. Maybe my answer is, oh, let me think about this here. Let me have a look. Hugo, Hugo, did you tighten that up? Hugo, every time you work on it, it's way too tight. I can't get it loose and whatever. So Conrad Barr comes up with, we should have a wrench that measures how tight it is, because Hugo tight is way different than Conrad tight. Kind of makes sense. It's just the way it is. So they actually came up with the torque wrench, and the torque wrench is going to actually be a measurement. Like, this always reminds me of, I don't go to Starbucks for the record, but if you do, good for you. But when you go to Starbucks and they say, do you want sweetener? Like, how much sweetener do you say? You want like a little or a lot, or like, how would you measure the amount of sweetener in your coffee?
Package.
You can
Pumps?
measure it in packets. Packets are
By
standard. Or
pumps.
pumps.
Tablespoon.
Pumps, tablespoons, these are all standard. If you just say a lot of sugar, I don't know if you mean like a shovelful, like is a shovelful a lot, but like, see what I'm saying? So if there's no unit of measurement, you don't, a lot, tight is very vague, ambiguous, if you will. Sweet is very questionable, like how sweet, right? So they standardized it. Foot pounds. Hugo's foot pounds of 100 foot pounds is the same as Conrad's 100 foot pounds after they made this torque wrench. Cool. And that's why we really need to refer to the spec and use the torque wrench. If we refer to the manual and it says 76 foot pounds for lug nuts, and we use a torque wrench that's calibrated in good condition, we're tightening it exactly plus or minus 1 to 3% to the spec. So we can go to sleep at night, your head hits the pillow and you're like, are those wheels going to fall off? Oh, no, wait. I looked up the spec and I torqued at the spec. Okay. Makes sense. That's the type of sleep I want. I don't want to be like, well, I tightened it, but what if I was kind of weak that day? Or I tightened it, but I'm not exactly sure what the spec was. I just kind of guessed, right? So like the spec and the torque wrench make it so you could sleep well. That's your goal. Okay. And this all started with underground water repair school, sewer pipes or storm drains, or, sewer technically can mean a lot of different things. All right. So the click style has been a staple. So in 1938, they came up with the click style, and it's basically remained unchanged. Some of them are older looking than others. Like, I got a couple old ones. This is an older click style, and it's still works. It's kind of like a backup. I used to actually keep it in my truck, but then I thought about it. Banging around in the truck is probably not good for the calibration. I just don't really like the lock, how you turn it and lock it. It's a little, not my favorite, right? But they came way back in the day. And this is preferred over this. Okay. So this is good for some things, but this is going to be preferred. Cool. And then of course we'll get into more of the modern types in just a bit, but here's how it's expressed. Okay. Bolt length and weight units. So what? Both length and weight units. So what? Foot pounds. That's going to be our go-to. Feet is length, pounds is weight, or inch pounds. Now, what's the difference between foot pounds and inch pounds? Anybody know? What's the difference
Inch
between
pounds are usually like used on smaller fasteners.
Yeah, it's a lot more precise. So like, if let's say I wanted to cut a piece of wood, I would probably call it out in inches, right? I wouldn't be like, cut that 2x4 3 feet. And you'd be like, 3 feet exactly? Like, do you mean 36 inches? So if it's to the nearest foot, that's a bigger scale. If it's to the nearest inch, that's a smaller scale. So when the bolt is smaller, it makes sense a lot of times to use inch pounds because it's a little more precise. Makes sense. Maybe let's go with 18 inch pounds. How many foot pounds is that? And that'd be like 1.5. So you'd be like, is it 1.5 foot pounds or 1 foot pound or 2 foot pounds? It's just not exact enough. So use the inch pounds. All right. Now, who knows how many inches to a foot?
12.
12?
12, 12-inch
12,
pounds to 1 foot-pound. So if I said 2 foot-pounds, that's 24-inch pounds. 3 foot-pounds is 36-inch
30.
pounds. Makes sense? So if you got a spec in foot-pounds, but you had your torque wrench that only did inch pounds, that's fine. You just do the calculation, no problem. You can switch back and forth. The nicer thing too, and we get into these digitals, and I do have my digital down here. Although I have the old digital. This is like the original Snap-on digital. The problem with this thing, it eats batteries up. So I take the batteries out to keep the corrosion from building up. But like this thing's cool because I can flip it between inch pounds, foot pounds, Newton meters, all in one torque wrench, right? So that's one of the positives of the digital. You don't have to do no math. You just push a button. And it's not that I can't do math, but I rely heavily on the calculator, and slowing down to run the calculator takes time, right? So if I can press a button and it speeds me up, that puts more money in my pocket. It's worth buying the digital. However, I'm not going to lie, the digital's a hassle because the batteries. The newer ones are a little bit better on battery life. Cool. But you can do the math. If you wanted to do foot pounds to Newton meters, honestly, I'd just Google that. Google will pull up a calculator and it's trustworthy. You can flip both ways back and forth. That's fine. Cool. All right. So there's the
Question
bolt.
about the
Go ahead. Shoot
question
it.
about the wrench. What is it called again? The correct term?
Oh, a torque wrench?
Oh, torque wrench. I always called
Yeah.
it just precise measurement. Okay.
Yeah.
I have one right now, but I don't store it at 0. My brother told me that you should always store it at 0. How true is that?
That's absolutely true. It's actually covered later in the presentation. The reason why
Oh,
is because inside that torque wrench is a spring. And if you guys have seen springs and you leave a lot of weight on a spring, it'll start to like sag or
okay.
deform
Makes
it.
sense.
It loses its tension. So you are supposed to
Okay.
turn them down. Now,
Okay.
I'll even pause on that. I'm gonna bust out my other torque wrench.
Cool. Cool.
And by the way, these get stored in a case. So that's just a best practice. But with this torque wrench, which I bought
Mm-hmm.
actually when I
Oh,
was at
nice.
your stage, I bought this student discount, just like where you guys are at. This you'll
Nice.
notice, it's turned all the way down. See, I can't go down anymore. Now, when I want to set it, I can adjust it up, right? But when I'm done, I turn all the way down. And I got into like a small debate with somebody once, and I wasn't really trying to make it an argument, but there was egos involved. And I had a guy, student, who was like, well, you're supposed to turn it to the lowest setting. Now, how do you interpret that? This lowest setting is 50 foot-pounds. So does that mean I should leave it at 50? Right? It's a little hard for me to get you to see it, but because this computer can only do auto fuzzy background, it's a school computer. I was thinking about using my other one, but does that mean I should turn it down to 50? Because I interpret it that I should just back it off all the way till it doesn't go anymore. And that way there's no tension on the spring. And it was like, no, it says the lowest measurement. But see, I think when they say the lowest measurement, they just mean back it all the way off. I'm pretty sure I'm right. But if somebody tells you set it to the lowest measurement and you interpret that as 50, that's fine. I'm pretty sure that that's not what they meant, but that's fine. What you don't want it at is 150, because then that spring is under tension all the time, and that's when it's going to deform. Okay, so for the clicker type, now there's different types, and we'll show you that this week too. So we're talking about how it's expressed. Now let's have a look when we get into like tightening a bolt. Okay, 1 foot is 12-inch pounds. 1 foot-pound is 1.36 Newton meters. Then we can even get into ounces. It doesn't really matter. Here's how you calculate it. Length times force equals torque. So the reason that that's kind of important is those of us with the smaller stature, myself not included, if you had to tighten something, or let's say loosen something, let's say you're trying to get an oil filter housing off and it's really tight, which do you think is going to be more helpful? I give you this wrench. I give you this wrench.
Oh,
I gotta
the longer
The
one.
longer one.
And now
More leverage.
you explain, more leverage is how I think of it too. But now you explain to me how this calculation makes sense.
Let me see.
If you increase the length, then you also increase the amount of torque you can do.
Bingo. So
Oh, that
you
makes
only have
sense.
you only have so much strength, right? I mean, if you're hanging off of the bolt or the oil filter, you only weigh so much. Cool. So how would you increase your force? You could do it with leverage, longer length, even with the same amount of force will equal more torque. That's exactly why the longer wrench works, generates more torque. It's why it works better to break stuff loose. If you really wanted to go the best, I'd
Yeah,
just go
bring out the big dad.
with the straight up breaker bar. Okay, that one's going to give whatever I need. Cool. And if I'm really mad, I'll get the jack handle. No, I would never do that. I would never do that. You'll never do that either.
Guilty. Guilty.
Oh dear, you're getting pressing charges. All right, so there you go. 1 foot length, lifting 1 pound would be 1 foot pound. Cool. And that's why, and a 2 foot length would lift 200 pounds, 200 foot pounds, right? You can see the difference. 1 foot, 2 foot, 200. Okay. And then, we could do a lot of calculations, but basically you got to understand it gets more into physics. Sir Isaac Newton is really the one that came up with this. The more applicable part to you is this, right? So depending on the amount of force that you apply, it'll do some good things or some bad things. All right. If you look at this bolt, we're going to actually start with this one down here. You see that? That bolt is at rest. That's why there's a spring like that. When we go ahead and we thread it in and we torque it to spec, do you see this bolt, how it's being stretched? You notice this spring, doesn't it look stretched out? That's normal, actually. Every time we torque a bolt, we stretch it. We're supposed to do that. If you don't stretch it, let's just say you hand thread it in, it's not stretched. That bolt's not providing correct clamping force. That bolt's not going to hold itself in there. It's going to fall out. So I saw something on a video. I don't actually totally remember what the video was about, but I remember somebody commenting like, does anybody else hand start every single bolt on the job before tightening any of them? And that nearly gave me like a heart attack. I was like this. And the reason why, if you just hand start a bolt, you're not giving it this stretch. I'm telling you now, that bolt's not doing its job and it's going to fall out. Now, of course, if you hand start the bolt, every single bolt on the job, and then you torque every single bolt on the job, amazing. That's good. That's great. But I suspect a person who does that is going to forget a lot more than a person who does, let's say, one component, right? If it's a wheel, 5 lug nuts, torque 5 lug nuts, right? Now, if it's a tire rotation, honestly, I'm probably going to do all 4 of them at the same time, but let's just say it was, we did that clutch, right? Remember when we did that transmission? I would never get that transmission up in there and hand start every single bolt and then hand start the drive shaft and then hand start the shield. I mean, I would never hand start every single part of the job because if I forget to torque any of them, this bolt stays like this. It doesn't stretch, it falls out. Okay. That's the negative of not tightening it enough. Everybody clear? It doesn't clamp and it falls out. However, there's a problem on the other side of it, which is if you over torque it. So if you over torque it, this bolt has actually been stretched. They call this necking. That bolt, does this bolt look very strong to you? Especially right there? That bolt's not going to give us the rigidity and the strength that we need. So tights tighten, 2 tights broke is actually not exactly 2. If you over torque it and it gets to the point where it's about to break, that will break, under operation. Like let's say that's a wheel bolt or a stud. You might hit a bump and it might bust right off. Make sense? So you can't be putting your gun on kill and calling it a day. You don't know, are you over torquing to the point of making the metal fail? At which point, that's not safe, right? If you stop here, you might get lucky because the person to take it out, it might break off so easy. It might be like, oh yeah, let me take this click. What the heck was that? That bolt broke off. That was so weird. I didn't even turn it hard. That's because it was over torqued on install. That happens sometimes. But when you get it out, it does look like this. You can see a thin part where it's like stretched. Or if you overshoot it, you go right to this spot. This one is over torqued and it was to failure, right? It broke in half. So if you're tightening the bolt, that's where tights tighten, two tights broke kind of comes back in. If you over torque it that much, you'll actually break it off. However, let's see what you guys know about metal. What if we used a steel bolt and an aluminum valve cover to bolt down a coil? If you over torque it, you think that steel bolt's going to break?
It's gonna
No, it'll be the valve cover.
strip
Yeah,
the
the
Yeah.
valve cover is gonna strip it.
Rip the threads out, maybe crack the valve cover, something, right? So now it's not replace the bolt. Now it's like replace the component. You might be able to drill it oversized and helicoil it or time sert it or something. But either way, big boo-boo. So we're not going to get that crazy into thread repair in this class. We are going to measure some bolts and precision measurement, but the main focus is going to be follow the procedures, torque it to spec, don't break stuff. Okay. In your year 2, I'm going to let you break stuff because it's in engines. I purposely have you break stuff and then spend the whole entire day fixing the stuff that you broke so you really learn your lesson. But right now, we're not going to go there. All right. So just torque it to spec, know how to happen. Now there's some good fun information you must know. When you're torquing a bolt, 45% of that torque goes toward this friction surface right here where the head of the bolt touches the part, valve cover, wheel with the lug nut, cylinder head with a cylinder head bolt, whatever, you name it, drain plug where it seats against the pan, right? 45% of that overcomes this friction right here. Another 45% of that is friction on the threads where it's metal to metal, right? Steel to aluminum or whatever. Does anybody know the total 45 plus 45?
Where's the last 10%?
That is actually going for stretch. So if you have 100 foot-pounds, about 45 of those foot-pounds is wasted here, 45 is wasted here, and that's fine. We know that. We design it like that. And then only 10% is actually going to stretch the bolt. Okay. And that's why it's really important that we have, good condition bolts and stuff. So like, for example, if you had lug nuts that were rusty and nasty and dirty, they're actually going to, on the threads, they're actually going to take too much turning force to overcome that rusty, nasty stuff. And you're not going to get your 10% of stretch. All right. So this chart shows you if you had clean and lubed bolts, and let's say we go for 100 foot-pounds. See, there's your 100. If we apply 100 foot-pounds to clean and lubed bolts, we will generate a clamping force of almost 13,000. So a clamping force of almost 13,000 pounds. Now the engineers come up with the numbers that it needs. Like, so for example, 100 foot-pounds is a fairly common lug nut torque, but usually on domestics, right? So let's say that they said 100 foot-pounds. That's probably because they did calculations based on the vehicle's weight, based on the inertia. So like calculating how fast it can go and how tight it can turn and all this type of stuff. And they came up with 12,500 pounds of clamping force needed. Cool. Now that would be for one, and they have 5 lug nuts, or sometimes they have 6 or 8 or whatever, right? But the engineers came up with an actual number. Do the technicians come up with the number? Do you calculate it based on vehicle speed and weight and all these factors? And you come up with, oh, we need 12,500 pounds of clamping force. I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the qualifications to do that. So if somebody asks me, hey, how tight should I make this? I'm gonna tell you straight up, I don't know. Because I don't do the math. That's not my job. I really don't like math, which is part of the reason I'm not great at math. And that's part of the reason I didn't continue with a lot of schooling to be an engineer, right? I did a lot of schooling for technician stuff because I like that stuff better. That's just me, right? But I also don't pretend to be an engineer. Make sense? So if you ask me what a torque spec is, the only reason I'll give you an answer is if I looked it up and I knew. I never calculate a torque spec. It's just not what I did. It's not my expertise. Cool? It's not yours either. Nor is it the technician in the stall next to you. Okay, that's the lesson there. We don't do this. We look up the spec and then we execute. All right, so let's say we're supposed to do 100 foot-pounds so we can get our 12,500 or whatever. But the problem is the lug nuts are rusty and dirty and nasty and dry. If they're dry and nasty and you do 100 foot-pounds, how much clamping force might you get?
4,000.
8,000.
Ooh, 4,000 is not enough. 4,000 may not hold that part correctly. If it's a cylinder
6,000.
head bolt, go ahead.
6,000. Is
Either way,
4,000 to
it's probably more like
6,000?
four. Yeah, 40, 200, 45, right around there. Definitely not 12,000 though. Would we agree? You're not getting nearly enough clamping force. So the torque spec is true, but it's assuming the threads on the nut and the bolt or the nut and the part or the bolt and the part or whatever are in good condition. Okay, they have to be in good condition. Who's ever heard this saying? A good cross thread will always hold. That was a lie. That was a lie. Okay, I've heard it. It's funny. I'll even laugh at it sometimes, but it's totally not based in reality. Now,
That's
yes,
funny.
if you cross thread a bolt really bad, it won't fall out. I agree, but it did not provide the clamping force that it was supposed to. Okay, so that's part of the lesson, right? We're supposed to get the clamping force. We get that by having good, clean threads. Sometimes they'll call for oil. A lot of times they won't. You don't really want to oil something if it calls for it to be dry, because if you oil it, remember this picture? You're reducing the friction here, which means your 100 foot-pounds, less of that 45 will be used up. You'll actually potentially overstretch it, right? So if they don't call for oil, don't oil it. If they do call for oil, oil it. And that's mostly when you're getting into like more technical things like engine building with cylinder head bolts and stuff. But this is a critical thing for you to understand. Kind of get it? It's not just so the bolt doesn't come out. It's got to provide the squeezing, the clamping force. Cool. Now here are the phases. All right. You're probably somewhat familiar with some of these. Rundown, alignment, elastic. That's where you should stop. All right. And then this one, yield, this is where you messed it up, unless it's torque to yield. We'll come to that. Here's what this looks like on a chart. All right. Anybody ever spun the lug nuts up and you notice for a while they're pretty easy and they don't get harder for a while? They're just like free spinning. You're just like, that's actually when it's kind of convenient to use the impact gun, to be honest with you, because you're just spinning and spinning and spinning, but you don't get to use any power tools this semester. So that's a no. So when you're spinning these lug nuts up, start to visualize this. You're spinning it. It's not getting harder. That's because you're in the rundown phase. See this? It's flat. This is your effort right here. The more up it goes like this, that's getting tighter and tighter. See your torque was at, let's make this 10 foot-pounds. It was 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It never got any more difficult, right? Then all of a sudden, you ever notice when you're threading those down, all of a sudden it starts to get a little harder? That's usually when you're aligning the wheel, all right? That's like when the wheel's starting to get centered, you're aligning the two pieces. That's starting to line the holes and line the parts up. Make sense? And then this is usually when we can't finger tighten anymore. So what would you do next?
Go for the ratchet.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. Because look, you need to make more torque and you can't make that much torque just twisting. Make sense? Like a typical person finger tight is usually something like about 5 foot-pounds, right? If you need 10, if you need 15, if you need 20, you can't make that with finger tight. You got to change over to a tool. It could be a wrench, ratchet, something, screwdriver maybe, right? But you notice it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Do you see how this line is very linear? It's a linear line. You know what that means? Like it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And then generally somewhere in here, that's it. You're torqued to spec, 76 foot-pounds. And the torque wrench goes click. And you're like, thank you very much. Move on to the next lug nut. The next, do that 4 times, 20 lug nuts on a Camry, right? That's all you're doing. But this is the thing. What if you don't stop? What happens to it's getting tighter, tighter, tighter? Righty tighty, righty tighty, righty. Whoa, what happened right there?
Over torqued.
Yeah, but there's like, if this was a bumper sticker, you wouldn't say over torqued, right? If this was a meme on Facebook, a Facebook meme, you know what a meme is, right?
Yeah.
No, what'd you
I don't
say?
know.
A
A
meme?
meme. A
No,
meme.
no,
A meme.
meme. Spell
A
it.
meme.
Spell it, dude. Spell it. I challenge you.
M-E-M-E.
Mimi, that's right. Thank you. Let's move on. Uh-huh. All right. So if you want to make a Mimi, if you want to make a meme, what would you say? Righty tighty became.
Righty Lucy.
Yeah, so see that meme? That's all about this right here. You're tightening it, you're tightening, you're feeling really good, and then it goes, "Ugh," and you're like, oh, you know you just messed something up. What'd you do? Did you overstretch the bolt? Did you rip the threads out? I don't know. Something went wrong there. Make sense? So normally it's righty tighty, click. We're done. We're happy. If you overshoot it, it's righty tighty, righty loosey. Oh, uh-oh. Take it back out and find out what you damaged, what went wrong, what happened. Make sense? So this is a visualization of what you should be familiar with feeling. When we're doing this semester, remember, you got to develop the feel. Some of you may already kind of have the feel, but you're going to get a little better. Some of you may have no feel. You may come from families where your parents are white collar people. There's no tools in the house, so you got to get some hands on and get some experience with this type of stuff, because this is what you're going to be doing all day. And when something goes wrong, you need to know what went wrong and how to proceed and how to fix it. Okay. So again, rundown, easy alignment starts to get tougher. Change over to ratchet. Tougher, stop. Unless it's torque to yield, which we will cover. Okay, that's the visual. Cool. Now torque to yield's different. Yield phase is over here. Some of the bolts we're going to be using, and see, this used to be kind of special, like cylinder heads and some engine stuff would be torque to yield, but they're doing torque to yield bolts on regular brake bolts and stuff now. Torque to yield is where you purposely go into this red phase. The problem with going into the red phase is it doesn't get any tighter. It probably won't click your torque wrench. So if it's a torque to yield fastener, a lot of times we measure the final torque in degrees. So it might be like, yeah, do 18 foot-pounds plus another 90 degrees. When it's 90 degrees, that's telling us how much stretch it has, but it's not necessarily getting tighter at the end. You'd be like tighter, and then you'd be like, oh, the same. 90. There you go. Cool. Sometimes we're dealing with that. So you do have to understand a little bit more about torque than just make it click and move on. If it's torque to yield, it's going to have you do it in degrees. Okay. And there's also, and you can see this is like cylinder head. 27 to 32 plus 90, loosen 360, 27 to 32 again, do another 90 and then another 90. And that's times 1, 2, 10 for the right head, 10 for the left head. You could spend an hour, maybe at least half hour, just doing the bolt torque on the cylinder heads on this, because there's 6 steps on 20 bolts. That's kind of crazy, huh? There's 120 different things you have to do to torque the bolts on this 4.6 liter engine. Cool. Are we trying to do heads right now? No.
No.
But do you understand, if you jumped in the service manual and you didn't really understand this, you'd be like, wait, it says torque it to 27 to 32, then 90, then loosen up, and then torque it again. And then, nah, I'm just going to skip that. Just give me a torque spec. Like, how about 100 foot-pounds? I don't know. Once the bolts are into the torque to yield phase, the number of foot-pounds to make the torque wrench click, it doesn't change. It's kind of like it's in the yield phase. It's got to be by degrees. It's pretty trippy if you think about it. Cool. So, and remember, minimize the friction to maximize the torque. You guys, 1 second while this door opens. You can't see it though. One moment. I think you can hear me. You didn't hear that though, huh? Turn me off, see?
I don't hear anything.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, no, I just hear you.
Good. That was good because there was a whole bunch of noise here. Okay. So grades of fasteners, right? And this is just getting into a little bit. The bolt has a specific hardness. So that's part of the reason you can't always just go by, like, if it's an M 8 by 1.25, the torque specs can vary, because sometimes they'll have like a grade 2, which is kind of weak, or they might have a grade 5, or they might have a grade 8, right? So let's take a quick look at this. If there's no marks, which of these do you think it is? You get to match them. They're not in order.
Grade 8 for sure. No, I don't know. I think
Okay, how about this? 3 lines, 6 lines. I kind of think you might have to add 2 to the number of lines. What would you get if you had no lines?
Grade 2,
2,
All right, what
Grade
if you had
2.
3?
grade
5.
5.
Grade 2.
Okay, so yeah, that's how you do it. All right.
That
That's
makes
just
sense.
telling you the grade, like the hardness of the bolt. Okay. So just be aware. Usually we're not super worried about it, but in the case that a bolt gets damaged, you need to replace it. You really need to replace it with the correct grade. And putting grade 8 bolts in a grade 2 spot is not necessarily an upgrade. Sometimes we want softer bolts, like with an exhaust that vibrates. We may want a grade 5. You don't want to put a grade 8 because then it's too rigid right there and it can tend to break the bolt. Right? Harder is less flexible. Cool. And then, what grade do you think this bolt is? It's considered a hex cap screw. I actually don't remember this. I think I do.
Grade 2, maybe.
It's an 8 plus. I thought it might have been 5. All right. And then when we're doing this sequence, now you guys can see on a lug nut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Guess what? This week, you guys are all going to be doing tire rotations. 4, 2, 5, 3, 1 is not it. You don't do it how the clock does it. Make sense? You're trying to always go across. That way you're drawing it down straight. You have to keep that in mind. If it was a 6 lug, it'd be more like straight across, almost across, straight across, almost across, straight across. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Does the like I know you said like do it in a star pattern, but like could you start with number 3 then go to 4, 5, 1, and 2? Or do you
Yeah,
like
you
always
could.
have to go like
No, you could just you got to know what you're doing. So if you start at 3, just don't forget to go back to 1. Makes sense. So people will tend to start at 1. If you draw a star, you tend to kind of have some muscle memory on how that pattern is. That makes most sense. But technically, you could do like a 4, 5, 1, 2, 3 if you want. You can do kind of whichever, but don't forget them though, right? And then when we get in person, I'll show you some of the tips and tricks to not leave a lug nut loose and have a wheel fall off. That'd be preferred. All right. So we'll go over some of those specified tips and tricks. Okay. All right, and then different types of torque wrenches. If it's a click type, hold it in the center of the grip. When you get to approaching that torque, you got to anticipate the click, right? If you're going super fast, by the time you feel the click, you overshot it, right? So remember that chart, it gets tighter, 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 click. You shouldn't be like, or a click, because you already may be into the torque to yield curve. Make sense? So as you're torquing it, slow it down, anticipate it. You should start to have an idea of what the torque should feel like. If it's 76 foot-pounds, then you should be like, I'm getting close, slow down. Now you don't have to go super slow the whole time. You want to go fast until you know it's in the ballpark, right? Then slow down and click. Who likes to do click, click? Who does click, click? Second click is over torqued. I'll bet you every dollar I got in my pocket. And let's see.
Yeah, a lot of shops.
It's worth betting.
A lot of shops don't let you do double. Or they tell you to not do double click because they overtorque it.
Exactly. So we could do an experiment. If somebody does a single click and a double click and we come back through with the digital torque wrench, we can actually measure exactly when it starts to turn. And you'll notice the second click is almost always over. So it's sort of like wasting time and making it worse. I would do 1 click. That's my recommendation. Now, if you do double clicks and you want to do double clicks at work, cool. But while you're in the shop, I have a say. If I catch you double clicking, I'm going to come over and you're going to do push-ups for every single foot-pound you over torque it. All right. And that's per lug nut. And if you've done 20 lug nuts, we're all going to be watching somebody do some push-ups. All right. And so we'll do some fun experiments. And I'm never going to be mad, but I'll call you out. I'll prove it to you too. I won't just tell you do it how I said. I'll prove to you that why you're doing it's wrong. All right. And then when we're using a torque wrench, let's say the torque wrench goes from 10 to 100 foot-pounds. If the torque spec is 100, it's not that you can't use that torque wrench, but the sweet spot would be like between 30 foot-pounds and 80, or like between 30% of the torque and 80. So you remember how I showed you that 1/2 inch torque wrench a second ago? Does anybody remember the lowest reading?
50.
Yeah, so if the spec is 50, That's not really the best torque wrench to use. I should probably downsize. If the spec is 60, again, it's not really the best torque wrench. If the spec is 75, 80, 90, 100, that's a great torque wrench. And that torque wrench is mostly what I use for lug nuts and stuff, right? So you sort of want it towards the middle of the range of the torque wrench for the highest level of accuracy. Cool. And then the thing too is that some of these torque wrenches are foot-pounds only. That one I had. Let's have a look. Only foot-pounds. Sometimes the ones at school will be foot-pounds here, Newton meters on the backside, right? So it depends on the specifics. If you, for some reason, have a torque wrench that's in Newton meters, fine. You can do all the torque in Newton meters. But me, myself, freedom units, please. Okay, and then if you drop it, it should be sent in for calibration. That part kind of sucks. Cool. Just the way it is. All righty. Okay, and the clicker 20 to 100%. And that one was, yeah. Clicker to 20 to 100%. Oh, here's a big one. Checked for accuracy regularly. How? Anybody know?
Um, some like if you torque some wheel lugs, they recommend you recheck them like after 100 miles, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely that's a pretty typical tire shop policy, but more what I'm showing you is torque.
Like a calibrator?
Isn't it like that one blue adapter that goes on the wall?
Exactly. Okay, so if we look right here, you can send them in, but if they have an adapter like this, that'll do a torque wrench. This is a really nice digital one. These ones are a little more fancy than I was actually looking for, but yeah, they can just have an adapter and then all your torque wrenches can be calibrated to that adapter. Some of these were a little more fancy. Let's see if we can get a basic one here. If I can type that, I am definitely off my home keys. Yeah, a lot of these are pretty fancy too. This one probably is the most visually appealing. So you're going to put the torque wrench on here, set it to 100. If it reads 100 here, it reads 100 there. Cool. Or let's say you put it on 50 and you make it click and then you read the last reading and it should read 50. Make sense? So some shops actually do have these and a lot of them do not. And when you go to send it in for calibration, they're going to do it more like this. And then they're going to actually calibrate the spring to make it accurate, plus or minus 1 or 2 or 3%, depending on the brand. Brian, go ahead.
I've got two questions. So one, I was changing the wheels on my mom's car, like rotating them, and we have a click torque wrench.
Sure.
But we added like a little like block to the actual head of the wrench. It looked like an
Okay.
electronic little block. Do you know what that is?
Oh, well, it could be a few different things. I suspect it's going to be a torque to yield adapter. Let's see, torque. I'm not exactly sure why you do a torque to yield adapter, but that's TTY. That's talking torque. I have to actually type it out. They do have stuff like this where it's 3/8 drive in and 3/8 drive out, and that can actually measure degrees. And sometimes you can even get those to measure torque. So if you use an adapter that's for torque to yield, it can measure degrees. But if you're using like a torque adapter, this can actually measure your foot-pounds. And that way you can use a regular ratchet or just a breaker bar. I'm guessing on that one. Like this one, for example, I've seen this. This one's a decent one. You could put this one on 200 Newton meters, and then if you turn it with a breaker bar, this will read 200. Or you could put it on angle, and if you need to go 90, like I have a torque to yield down there, but like I said, the batteries are always dead. So, and I'll put batteries in it right now, and the next time I use it, they'll be dead. So it just gets old. But with this one, you can set 90 degrees, and as you turn it, it would count from 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, and you can get exactly 90 or whatever the spec is. I'm suspecting it was an adapter for probably for torque. There's no reason you torque to yield bolts wheel lug nuts. My
And
best
then
guess.
for the other question I had too, how would you tell when a torque wrench is out of calibration?
And that's kind of the problem. So I keep it in the case. I turn it down all the way, and I'm mostly sure that it's in calibration. But the only way to really know is to get one of those torque wrench calibration tools and test it. And that should be done fairly regularly. And if it's not accurate, that's when you should send the torque wrench in to be calibrated. So we can make this about tools just a bit. Snap-on sells great tools. They are warranty for life, such as this flex socket impact, excellent, such as this illustrious and often missing 10 millimeter. However, torque wrenches don't carry a lifetime warranty for calibration. If you want to calibrate it, you have to pay for that.
I was gonna say for some dealers, I know our dealer at Toyota Orange,
Yeah.
we have a calibration to check the calibration on torque wrenches to see if it works. So we just have it on the wall.
Exactly. Look, that's a big plus, a really big bonus. Sometimes you guys are going to be promoted to the shop foreman. And honestly, if you want to improve the quality of work, a technician's not going to buy a torque wrench calibration station. But if you're to say, hey, I'm the foreman now, I think we should invest $800 in a torque wrench calibration station, and then show all your lube techs, line techs, everybody, hey, put your torque wrench on here and make sure it's accurate. That'd be a great thing to have. But a lot of dealers don't have them. But it's cool that Orange does. Definitely like that. Cool. Now, what do you think this means? Should never be used in a breakaway situation.
So loosen something up.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. Don't be using that for loosening. That's specific. That's a calibrated precision instrument. It's a torque wrench, not a torque hammer, not a breaker bar, not a torque self-defense weapon. You know, like it's a stinking dang torque wrench. Take good care of it. Keep it in the plastic, and that's gonna help it last longer before it's out of calibration. Kind of makes sense. So treat it right. Should always be stored at its lowest setting. How you interpret that, I don't know. I'm saying turned all the way down. I'm really confident I'm right, but if you want to set it to whatever the lowest number is, exactly at that number, fine. But I'm saying there's a little bit of tension on the spring at that number. I want to back it all the way down so it's loosey. Okay. Oh, and sometimes they should be cycled. So sometimes what that means is like you would set it to the torque, and a lot of times just like make it click and then actually start to use it. Sometimes that first click can be a little funky. And sometimes people would interpret that as like you'll go a little bit over, go a little bit under, and then land right at the 76 or whatever. But it's not really an issue with these typically. Don't use it in excess of its capacity. There's the beam. Cool. Can be calibrated. That's the biggest negative. Okay, the digital. Ooh, highly accurate. Treat it as a precision instrument. So in other words, go ahead, leave it outside in the driveway overnight when it rains. I mean, how that works out for you. Brian, go ahead.
I also heard with the click type torque wrenches, you don't want to like bounce on them. I know some people when they're torquing stuff, they'll like push up and down on them.
Yeah, smooth, click, smooth, click. That's going to help it.
Okay.
Bouncing it is kind of like jumping on the bed. If you jump on the bed, you're probably going to wear the springs in the mattress out. It's like same idea. Exactly. So the digitals are nice. And you got to know they're all calling for pulling right from this area where the grip is. Don't choke up here. That's going to affect your reading. Don't exceed the capacity, don't expose to moisture, and it's kind of cool because you can flip between foot-pounds, inch-pounds, Newton meters. Don't use cheater bars, kind of etc. So again, there's positives and negatives of each. The digital is a really cool one. I'll make one more plug for the digital. If you get the digital like I have, this can do, well, it does a few things. It beeps when you're at the torque. It vibrates when you're at the torque, so you get haptic feedback, but also whatever your number is, when you pull the torque wrench away, it'll flash your highest reading right there. So if you're shooting for 76 foot-pounds on the Camry tire rotation, and you're like, yeah, I stopped right when it beeped, but you were going fast and you pull it away and it's reading 89, it's because you overshot it, right? The click type can't give you that feedback. The digital can. So you go ahead with a digital and you try that double click thing, click, click, and then you look at that digital and you'll be like, whoa, I way overshot that, right? So these tend to give you a little bit nicer feedback. And the other thing is, if you have to get into torque to yield, which you don't if you're doing wheels and oil changes, but even if you get into brakes, you might. If you get into engines, you definitely will. You'll need torque to yield measuring equipment. So you can buy that little adapter, or if you get the nice digital one, it's called the Snap-on Tech Angle, or they have Matco makes one. Precision Instruments got a nice torque wrench, but it's not digital. You want one that can do torque to yield because you can go real quickly from, let's say, like 20 foot-pounds to 90 degrees. You'll do 20 foot-pounds, beep, and then you'll press one button, it'll pull up 90 degrees, and then you can go the additional 90, right? And that's really nice when you're into engine work or something. The click types can't do any of that. Okay. Pretty cool. All right. So that's torque. If you guys got any questions about torque, go ahead and give me some feedback. But let me hijack you for what you could or can or maybe should or shouldn't buy.
What
Precision.
about split beam torque wrenches?
Aha. Look at the screen. I'm about to pull up the split beam. This
Cool.
is the Amazon price. This is a great torque wrench. There's a couple negatives. You can't loosen anything at all. The positive, they're accurate. It's a little bit hard to get them really fine tuned though. Like if you look on the scale, let's see right here, you could tell 150 pretty easy. You could tell 200 or whatever. But if you're trying to get like 76, it's a bit of a guess, but there's a couple benefits of these. And you notice that arrow, it'll only tighten. You can't loosen anything. The main benefit of one of these is pretty simple. You don't have to turn it down when you're done. So if you set it to 76 and you're doing 76 all day long, you can leave it set to 76. The way this works is a little bit different. You're not putting that spring under tension. So these are nice for just lug nuts. This is going to be the number one. I would say this is the number one. If you want to do more work like cylinder heads and stuff, I'd probably go clicker or digital. But I don't know that I'd get a digital and be using your $750 Snap-on digital torque wrench to do lug nuts all day. Okay, I just don't think I'd use it like that. I would probably get one of these. Now, Precision Instruments is the original supplier for this. So if you look at this, Precision Instruments is here. Let's go with split beam torque wrench. Let's see what other imitations we got. That looks like a knockoff Precision Instruments. Tecton, I've heard different things. I've heard that Tecton may contract out Precision Instruments to make their torque wrench. And I'm not totally sure about that, but that looks a lot like the Precision Instruments. It also looks a lot like that Hecha China one though too. So I'm not exactly sure, but it looks a lot like that. But the Precision Instruments makes the tool for Snap-on, Mac, Matco. Here's a gear wrench one. I actually don't know if Gear Wrench makes theirs or they have them made. I genuinely have no idea. You can get this Tecton quarter, half, and 3/8, $165. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're great, but they're definitely better than trying to get Harbor Freight. Tecton's a company that you can get some discounts from, right? So if we just looked at torque wrenches, cool. Let's just for the heck of it do a Snap-on split beam. If you look at this tool, oh, that's the icon. See, they're trying to get business. If you look, that's the 3/8. We want 1/2 inch. Take a look at that. Sure, I'll bite. Oh, that's not the Snap-on one. Okay, I do want to find the genuine Snap-on one because I want you to notice something. Does that not look like exactly what we were just looking at? So that's what I'm saying. If you want the Snap-on one, cool, get the Snap-on one. But I'm just letting you know, Precision Instruments made it. You're buying a Precision Instruments one. All right, how about Matco split beam torque wrench? Huh, take a look at that. Wait a minute. For real? That's the same thing. Like I said, Precision Instruments made it.
So at that point, you're just paying for the branding then, not really like
Exactly.
any quality differences.
Exactly.
All right.
You see how these are all identical? So, you know, you guys should get whatever the best deal is. And the thing is, as we get further into tools, you guys will know you have discounts available to you, right? So before we get into, we'll skim tool lesson a little bit, but let's just say Snap-on student SEP, student excellence program. You guys can not yet once you're either in 210 or in general. I'm gonna reject all these cookies. I don't want Snap-on all over me. They're gonna just try to market to me, custom market to me, right? But if you wanted the student program, you get signed up for it, you're eligible. There's all sorts of stuff. You're typically getting 50, 55, and sometimes even 60% off. I don't think that they'll let us really browse much right now, but I do periodically get emails from them. So if I were to search Snap-on real quick, I don't know why my calendar's up. I don't want my calendar. I want my email. Okay, let's just see, because they do like hot deals and stuff like that. Let's see. Let me just get you.
Is the
Oh,
student discount only for online orders?
okay. I'm gonna clarify that, but first I want to show you this. This was like a really special deal. I'm gonna set as full screen, but I need to pull this over here. How do I get this over? Let me exit that. I'm gonna have to pull my whole email over, which is fine. Okay, so like this. Check this out. This set right here, cordless ratchet, 1/4 inch, cordless ratchet, 3/8, same batteries, cordless light, cordless hood light that stretches across the hood, 1/4 inch extensions, 3/8 extensions, 3/8 swivel, a 3/8 swivel socket set, a 1/4 inch swivel socket set, and the chargers, 2 chargers, was $750. That was like a $3,000 set. And so they once in a while they do some specials. So, you know, while I'd say you should do economical, tool shopping, once in a while some of these big tool companies give students a really big hookup. They did a student deal on them because they had like a very small inventory of them, and they've gone to a newer style impact and battery. I mean ratchet. So they're not the brushless ones. So like, hey, we got like 500 of these non-brushless sets. Let's make a deal. And they could have sold them to the tool trucks, and they could have sold them, but instead they offered them to students for that price. So we bought all 500 of them in the student program pretty quick. Like at least 10 people from the previous cohort got on this deal. You guys weren't here quite yet. Right. So that's an example of a pretty cool deal. Now I'll answer that previous question that we just had. How do you get the deal? You have to go through the Snap-on Excellence program. The tool truck can't buy the stuff for what the deal you're going to get on it. So the second you roll up on the truck, and you'd love to support your truck, right? Because when a tool breaks, those are the people who are going to help you out get it replaced. All right. But when you want to get the deal because you're a student, they can't even come close to the deals you can get, right? They just can't. That set right there, that was $750 for you. The tool truck's probably going to pay $1,000 and sell it for $3,000. You're going to pay $750. You can't possibly get a better deal on the tool truck. They're paying more than you, and they still have to make some money. They got to put some fuel in that truck, and they're kind of hungry. They want to eat, right? So they have to mark it up. Cool. So there's this program, and there's instructions on how to do this in the class. And Matco has their own. Okay, so here's the Matco student program. It looks like, actually, you know what? I think I did have that account. I don't have the Snap-on one, but let's just say we want torque wrench. Here's the split beam. Oof, that's definitely gone up. That hurts a little bit. But yeah, if we go to split beam, I don't think that we can see the student price until it's in the cart. So this is the retail price. You see that price. Oh, yeah. I don't think I can see the price because I guess I don't exactly understand why I wouldn't see it. Let's see if it's in the cart. I think it's going to show full rip. Yeah, that definitely didn't go through right. If you're logged in right for the student program, you'll get very, very different prices. So for example, maybe that torque wrench isn't part of it. I kind of think it is though, but they'll give you their price right on here when you have the account made up. It's also possible my account's no longer valid. That's pretty nice set. That impact's pretty nice. So you guys could browse. The thing is right now, if you're brand new, you don't really know what tools you need. So I'd probably wait on that. But once you're ready, then you can start looking at this type of stuff. See, I searched up there. Maybe I need to search under here. Student overview.
Is the student discount only for certain items, or is it for like the whole website?
Almost everything, but not everything. There are some things that are no-go, right? So there are some no's. If you try to buy the biggest, hugest, ridiculous toolbox, that's going to be a no. But most of the toolboxes are included. And that's not all. They also have Mac student program. Right, so you can get this.
Question is the so you know how when we buy it online, when we count, do they give us lifetime warranty still or no?
Yes, and I'm gonna clarify that, but first,
Uh,
let me make sure you see. So Snap-on Mac, Matco, Gear Wrench. Has their own program. And you can see they've got some pretty cool stuff listed right here. Carts, introductory sets, etc. Tecton will also give you 25% off. There's also there's Sonic Tools. They don't usually give us discounts. There's many tool companies that, and you guys should consider all of them. However, to that warranty for life discussion and to the tool truck discussion, if you buy your Snap-on Mac, Matco, and Gear Wrench too, and Cornwell's another one, but I don't think Cornwell does anything with student program. At least they didn't, but this is the time where I'll check again. Somebody's searching for it, but I don't think so. Yeah, there's just homepage. I don't think they're doing any student discounts. Yeah, no. But the reason I say Snap-on, Mac, Matco, Cornwell, and even Gear Wrench too, a lot of those companies have a truck that goes around to sell, right? So if, let's say, this is a Matco plier, it's a small one, but if I break this, I want it to be replaced. Better yet, I'll tell you what. 10mm socket, 3/8 drive. How often do you expect to use it?
Very often, and you're probably gonna lose it.
Every day. So if my tool came from, let's go with Home Depot. Now, and I'm not totally sure what their status is. Home Depot says that the Husky tools are warranty for life, but I don't exactly know what that means. I can tell you that I had a rake and I broke it and I brought it in and they're like, yeah, that's warranty, but you got to go get one. And then they didn't have it. And then they're like, you can get a different one. And they just ended up refunding me for it. And I bought a totally different brand. Okay. So it's a little questionable warranty wise, but you could jump on a Husky set like this, and that comes with a bunch of stuff. If you break the 10 millimeter Husky tool and you need it that day, what are you going to do?
Ask the next person right next.
Probably. So you could go to home. You could be like, hey boss, I got to clock out and go to Home Depot so I can finish this job. That's not real professional, right? Or you can ask the tech next to you and be like, hey dude, I broke a 10 millimeter. Can I borrow yours? And they'll be like, man, you're buying those cheap Husky tools. Like, just you're annoying me. You see what I'm saying? So in a lot of ways, in a tool that you're going to use all the time, it makes the most sense to buy the best quality you can, because that's going to hold up your day if it breaks. Cool. So if you break a Snap-on, Mac, Matco, Cornwell, gear wrench, those are generally considered pretty top of the line. Maybe Snap-ons, maybe the most top of the line. But if you break one of those, like, nobody's got anything to say. But if you break a Husky, if you break a Pittsburgh, don't you be asking to borrow nothing. I'm gonna tell you, well, you should have known. Pittsburgh, that's not for work. Pittsburgh for home and trash and the garbage and recycling. That's where those go. Now, with that being said, I'll pick on you a bit. Don't judge me. Come on in. It says right on it, China. All right. I have some Pittsburgh stuff, but this is a 3/4 drive, 1 7/16. I'm not really going to use commonly. I'm not going to spend $100 on one socket from Snap-on. Cool. So with some things, I'll even buy the cheap stuff too. But if it's something that's going to be a day in and day out, I'm going to get something that's going to be pretty legit. So that way it's not going to slow me down. And I worked with a guy who bought all of his tools when he got started from Harbor Freight. So the thing was, he went through a program too. He went to the same community college as me, but it was like the general, it wasn't the manufacturer specific. And he did the whole program, and he never really explored the student discount. And so when he graduated and he got offered a promotion, he's like, yeah, I'll be a line tech. And they're like, cool, you got your own tools? And he's like, I never bought any of my tools. So he just rolled over to Harbor Freight with his credit card and was just like swipe, 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 swipe. He got like a big old Harbor Freight Pittsburgh set. And I know he had it in a Waterloo toolbox. I'll even show you that I'm not lying. I think it was I don't remember if he ordered the box online. I think he might have ordered the box online. No, it wasn't a Waterloo. Whatever. It was all cheap stuff. But however, to his credit, it got him started as a line tech. Remember how we showed you the line tech money is a lot more. You can make thousands of dollars more a month as a line tech than a lube tech, right? So I still would have done what he had done. However, it would have been smarter if while he was in school to take advantage of those discounts, right? Because the Harbor Freight's cheap and the Snap-on Matco gear wrench is pretty expensive. But if you're getting it 50 to 60% off and it's going to last you your life, I would say it's worth it. Right. And Craftsman used to be a decent brand. It's still okay, but Craftsman is more US made. And if your Craftsman tools broke, do you guys know how you get them replaced?
Gotta call that in. I've had to replace Craftsman before.
Yeah, so it used to be you roll up to Sears and you're just like, hey, Sears, here's this broken tool. And they're like, yeah, I have one. I have some Craftsman stuff and I had it warranted at Sears. Does anyone know what Sears is? Does anyone not know what Sears is?
What's
They're
Sears?
gone.
It's gone. I mean, that's like an old school department store. It'd be at the mall. Of all the stores in the mall, my wife worked at the mall when we were kids. So when she worked at J.C. Penney, if I had to go to the mall to see her, but it was like not quite her break time, like you'd catch me at Sears. Sears was the only store I could do at the mall. Like that was it. Like you're gonna catch me in any of these other like what are the other ones? Macy's and stuff. No. Sears, they got riding lawnmowers. They got screwdrivers and wrenches and stuff. Like Sears is fine, but they're kind of gone. So now if you need a replacement Craftsman, you can try Lowe's, but Lowe's doesn't carry a ton of the Sears stuff. And yeah, like you're saying, if they don't have it, you could order it or whatever. So sometimes the tools you buy have to do with the deal, and sometimes the tools you buy have to do with the warranty, and sometimes it depends on where you work. So if you guys are working and you know that you have a Snap-on truck, but the Mac and Matco doesn't show up, I wouldn't buy Mac and Matco. Whatever truck shows up is probably what I'm going to try to buy, but I'm not going to buy it from the truck. I'm going to buy it on student discount. I'm going to try to save as much money as I possibly can. So that's a thing to consider. Now, let's say it's, we talked a little bit about Tecton. Let's say you buy a Tecton tool. Look at these. Hey, these are warranties. You can get all this type of stuff. Look at all that. Ooh, that's nice. All right. If you break a Tecton tool, what do you think you do with it? It's warranty for life. How?
You have to email them.
Yeah, you email them, you send them a picture of the broken tool, and they'll mail you a tool. And actually, that's not horrible if it's pretty quick. What do you guys think about Gear Wrench? You guys have seen their stuff, but I mean, if you break a Gear Wrench tool, how do you think you get your replacement? Let's say you break this ratchet in half. Boom, Gear Wrench 92, break it in half. Same thing. Go on the app, take a picture. Matter of fact, I have one that was warranted. This one was a little bit annoying, but it's not horrible. Right here and here. All right. I got 2 Gear Wrench wrenches. Gear Wrench being the brand of the ratcheting wrench. Okay, this one you can see. Look at the head. Ready? See that thing? This had a little lock right here. These are my favorite ones. You could actually do a thumb lock. I could put it any position I want and lock it. Okay. I broke the lock. So I said, hey, I'm ready for my replacement gear wrench. And they said, oh, that number right there, discontinued. Instead, you can have this one. What's the difference? It doesn't have the lock, but it's a non-locking flex head. So I was kind of bummed out, like, really, you discontinued it, but they can all discontinue stuff. But I took them a picture of this broken one and they mailed me this one, and it was there within like less than a week. Less than a week's not bad. Now, if you compare that to this one with the non-broken piece, see how this, I can lock and unlock this. That's a nice piece right there. I like that. I think Gear Wrench has the nicest gear wrenches. All right. And if I need to get a replacement and it only takes, a couple days, I'd probably rather go with one of the companies like Tecton or Gear Wrench where they mail you the tools than Snap-on, Mac, Matco, Cornwell who show up. Now there is a Gear Wrench truck. It's pretty rare, but there are, or even Cornwell, right? So my first recommendation is if you get the student discount and you buy it off of one of the trucks that show up and your tool breaks, how easy is it for you to get your replacement tool? Tool guy comes in, says, hey, how's everybody doing? What you need? And you're like, hey, buddy, look at this broken piece of crap, buddy. Give me a new one. And they take it and they go to the truck and they bring them out. Here's your new stuff, right? It's hard to beat that. However, they're not always run as well as they used to be honest. So you might be like, hey, this is broken. Like, oh, we got to order that. And then you're waiting a couple weeks and then you also got to wait for them to come back. And then sometimes they don't show up. So like the tool truck's not all it used to be. It's not as nice as it used to be, but that's a thing to consider. Now, if you're buying stuff and it's not really breaking, who cares? It's not a big deal. So if you're doing stuff at home and you're not really using your tools hard all day, every day, you're probably not going to break stuff. You may be like, oh yeah, Husky tools and Cobalt tools and whatever. It's fine. But if you're going to do day in and day out every day for your career, trust me, you're going to break some stuff. So what's your plan to get it fixed? What's your plan to get it warranted? What's your plan, et cetera. Now, you want to know how good all their warranties are? Lose a tool and see what's covered. Anybody know what happens if you lose it?
It's not covered.
No, nothing's covered. You lose the tool, that's on you. Now that sucks when you buy a Snap-on socket and it's $20, $30 and you lose it. It doesn't matter. You got to buy another one. Right. And so there's that. But if you don't lose them and you can get them warranted and, stuff, it's a one-time cost. There's no ongoing cost. It may be cheaper than if you got a Harbor Freight one and you write off how much time you've lost having to go get it replaced and gas and stuff. Unless you live right next door to Harbor Freight, in which case just roll over there.
Do they keep track of your purchases, or do you just like show up with like a socket, be like, hey, it's broken, swap it out for a new one?
Um, that depends on the individual. So let's say the tool truck rolled up and I was like, hey, this is broken, and like they're at the they're at the dealership and you didn't even work there and you just see them and you just whip in and you're just like a regular dude not in uniform. They're gonna be like, I don't think so, buddy. But if you're working at the shop and it's broken, they're not going to ask for a receipt. They're not going to see no receipt, no nothing. They're going to make sure it's a snap-on part. They're going to give you a new one because you're going to change jobs and you're going to change locations. And if there's a snap-on truck there, trust me, your stuff is covered. Now, once in a while, they'll give you some grief, and that's pretty frustrating to hear when they're like, hey, you didn't buy it from me, so I'm not going to cover it. No, no, no. That's like, I would roll that right up the chain to corporate and be like, I'm no longer going to buy Snap-on tools because I got the discount and your truck driver, your franchise owner won't honor the warranty. Like, no, they'll shut that down. Trust me, it'll be
So
covered.
so when you buy it online, it should give us a receipt, but we don't when we get warranty for it, we could
Don't
just
need to
use
show it.
Snap-on any Snap-on truck or what?
Boom. Yep. Just show them that, get it replaced. Maybe for fun, if any of you guys are working at the dealership and that happens, just say, hey, can I see how this warranty process goes and come back to the class with maybe a little video or a picture just to show how smooth it was. You can even tell your truck, your Snap-on truck or your Mac or whatever, they're a franchisee, right? So it's kind of like the dealer. They're not a corporate employee. They own the truck. They brand it with Snap-on, Matco, Cornwell, Gear Wrench, or whatever. So you could say, hey, can I just document how easy it is to get this warranted so I can bring it back to class and show them why they may want to consider these brands? They'll probably let you video somebody getting something warranted. It's every day. It's smooth. It's easy. I've done it 1,000 times. At one point, Mac was selling a whole set of drill bits. I still have it, actually. One down. They were warrantying drill bits for life. And that's kind of crazy. So I bought this whole big old drill index and they are warranted. Now, if you might be able to tell, you see these upper ones, how they're gold. When they sold them, they were gold. And every time one got dull, I'd be like, hey, let me swap it out. And that's why these are more like silvery. These are cobalt. So I bought a whole set of gold. And every time it would get dull, I would replace it. So all those non-gold ones have been replaced. That's crazy. But that was a $400 drill bit set. So some of their warranties are incredible. But then actually Mac stopped that. They were like, hey, that was supposed to be for broken, not for dull. Cause at that point I would just abuse it. I just put it in the drill and I just send it, no oil, no nothing, just and then take it out and be like, hey, I need another one. It's kind of probably abusing that in a way, right? But people do abuse the tools sometimes. It's nice when it's a big, strong company like that. Whereas sometimes the warranty is only as good as the person that's warrantying it. And if you got to go to the store and the people want to cop an attitude and stuff, like you're just dealing with a higher class person if it's someone with a franchise truck. Cool. However, maybe the ideal is you just take a picture of it that it's broken and they send you a new tool. And if it's there in a couple days, that's even better than the truck, right? So you got to weigh out what's actually going to get you back to work quicker. What's the better deal? What's the highest quality that's less likely to break? Factor all these types of things, but at least, be educated about it. Make sense? So now there's a big assignment due that's going to be on tools. One of them is going to be shopping, making a tool list, etc. I think overall you guys will do probably pretty decent on that. Okay. Any questions about how this tool warranty process goes and stuff? Some of those are really good questions. Feel decent. So like that assignment for tools is going to be down here. Right here. The lab packet 6, cool. The proper procedures is another one, right? Okay, now about tools. Who thinks that they know the name of every tool? Oh, I bet you don't. I bet you I could find something that somebody doesn't know. So here's how you're going to educate yourself on tools. There's two parts to this. One, you see this ABCs of hand tools right here? That is, you're going to laugh, but that's your first reading assignment. There's the chapter 2. The chapter's all right, and the chapter covers different tools and stuff. But like the ABCs of hand tools is some old Disney cartoon stuff. All right, you see this? Look at that. Now that's just a classic. All right, but the thing is, there's actually really good info there. So if you like reading, read. But if you Google ABCs of hand tools, you can watch a whole cartoon. It's showing you about how to use it, how to not use it. You see this guy right here? That's Primitive Pete.
That's my uncle.
Oh, it is? Your Uncle Pete? Don't be a Primitive Pete right there. So this is showing you like a very overview of how to not use a hammer, how to use a hammer, different types of screwdrivers, the stuff that can go wrong, right? Like this is where you really start if you don't understand tools. And if you do understand tools, this is still where you start. All right. So this is one of your reading assignments. Cool. It even shows you why the screwdriver is off or why the wrench is offset, etc. There's a lot of little details. Then there's going to be a pretty big packet that you're going to identify tools and establish when you'd use them, when you wouldn't use them. So this is not just for automotive, by the way. These are crowbars and claw hammers and saws and all sorts of stuff that you do with like construction. So this is typically something that would be explained like in a high school shop class, but those are gone, so you didn't get that. All right, so there's some pretty good stuff in there. All right, so that's something that you guys should study individually. Like I said, though, if you Google it, you can find the video. I kind of prefer the video myself. Like if I'll just skim it right here. ABC of hand tools video. Right there. That's it. 31 minutes. I think it's kind of fun. You got to understand it's from 1950, so you take some of the things they say with the time. Okay, but it's a fun one. It's a good one. You can actually learn some stuff. It was from 1945, Walt Disney Company. If you're up with GM, so if you don't like it, contact Disney and GM from 1950 or 45. Okay, and then other piece is right here in the lab packet. I'm going to prep you because part of the tools is a lot of identification. So this is some of the stuff you're going to be doing in class, right? What is this tool? Why is it so different than the other tools? Okay. What about, as we get a little bit further down, it'll talk about like match these up, or like which tool would avoid rounding the bolt head the best? The open end, the 12 point, or the 6 point, right? So there's a pretty big worksheet for you guys to do. So just to make sure you're ready, because Mr. Clyde and I are going to give you a couple demos, but then pretty quickly we're going to be into practicals. You should have all the information you need to identify what these are. There's only one negative about printing these out. These tools right here, you could zoom in fairly well, and I didn't download it, so it's a little bit ugly, but that's a 19, an 18, a 17. This is 5/8, 9/16, half inch. Those are different, right? If your printer is too fuzzy, you won't be able to tell, right? So understanding and identifying the names of these tools is going to be your next major assignment. You guys want a little, I'll give you a quick overview lesson on that if you want, or we could do 1,000 slides of different tools. All right, I'll just show you a few. You ready for that?
Quick overhead, please.
Yeah, that would be fun, because this is a great thing for you guys to learn with your partners and your teammates. All right, so here we go. I'm going to close quite a few things up, get my Zoom back up. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to flip. My audio probably changed because I'm no longer on my microphone. Okay, rear camera. Well, let me do the rear camera. Interesting. It used to let me do my rear camera. Video settings. Ooh, why are you gonna be mean? I want the rear camera. Huh. That is really interesting. I could always do my rear camera. Right now I can't. But that's okay. I got another possibility that could work, which is I just joined my own Zoom meeting on my phone, which would work too. Okay, here we go. It's mad because I'm on twice. That's okay. Okay, here we go. Meetings.
What's a crow's foot?
Exactly. All right, sound might get a little bit weird. Okay. And now I'm on. I got to turn volume down all the way. And then I'm gonna flip camera. Okay, now you can see, right? There you are.
Yeah.
Which works better, this way or the other way? Same?
That way. I think
Probably the horizontal would be better.
horizontal for sure.
Got it. Here we go.
Oh,
Top drawer is where I keep my sockets. So let's go over some stuff. All right, and you can make fun of me if you think I have OCD. I'm fine with that. Okay, so let's go over these. Can you tell these sockets are black? These sockets are chrome. What's the difference?
Impact rated
Impact.
sockets in the back.
Right. Generally, there's some exceptions though. Sometimes they'll make regular sockets that are actually black, but they're not impact. The impact sockets, like this axle nut socket, you'll notice they're thicker wall like that. Whereas if you look at a chrome, this is pretty thin wall. Which do you think is stronger?
Impact.
The thicker wall.
Exactly. But this is softer too. So what's interesting about impact, like I was thinking one of my common sizes would probably be like a 21. That one's not horrible, but the impact sockets won't crack and explode if you're on an impact, but they do get opened up and they get kind of loose. The 21 looks pretty decent. Yeah, the 19's even fairly decent too, but a nicer fitting would be a chrome one. Although that one looks kind of dirty. The chrome don't get deformed. Okay, so now all those were 6 points. You guys can see the 6 points here. 12 points I do have. Can you tell the difference?
Yes. There's
Right.
a lot more
But
room.
exactly. So this can go on in 2 different spots. You can go on here, 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 right? So these can be easier to get on and off. The negative would be this doesn't have quite as much surface contact on your, assuming it's a 6-point bolt, right? So that's going to give me a little bit better contact, less likely to round the edges. However, some bolts are 12-point, so you may need these. Now we'll zoom out for a quick second. Who knows the difference between this and this? It looks similar enough.
One's got a flex head.
Drive sizes.
Size
Quarter
wise?
and 3/8.
True. So this is a quarter. This is 1/4 inch. This 1/4 inch is the smallest I have, and it goes with all these 1/4 inch sockets. Makes sense? So if I want to go 1/4 inch drive, I got to use 1/4 inch drive ratchet, 1/4 inch drive sockets. Make sense? This 1/4 inch right here, it won't fit. There's nothing you can do. You can yell at it if you want. Or if I really wanted to use that, I would have to get an adapter. So I could go, see this? 3/8 quarter.
Step up adapt.
But why I would do that, I don't know. Maybe I really wanted the flex head, or something.
Or need
And
to
I
make
actually had a flex head wrench I need to get warranted, and it's hard because I don't have the tool truck now. So I gave it to a former student, like, hey, get this flex head 1/4 inch warranted for me. And I never got it back. And actually I forgot about it until right now. All right. So if I needed a 1/4 inch, I could make this work. If I needed a flex head, I could make this work. Or I could have just said, forget about the quarter altogether, ditch the 1/4 inch socket, ditched the 1/4 inch adapter, and just gone straight 3/8. Cool. So now I'm 3/8, 3/8. These go together, right? 3/8, 8 mm to 19. That's pretty typical. Makes sense. 1/4 inch. We're starting down at a 5.5, which actually I have out. I need to put this back. 5.5 mm. I can't get as low as a 5.5 with the 3/8. So just I don't have that set up. Cool. I can go up as high as a 15, I believe on this, 14 or 15. 15. So I can go to a 15. If I need bigger than that, I gotta move up to 3/8. 3/8 will take me up to 19. What if the bolt's a 21?
Or a 1/2 inch.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to 1/2 inch. So I could do 1/2 inch chrome, but a lot of times I'll just go to 1/2 inch impact. Sometimes I like the impact. Once in a while, I'll need the chrome, so I have some limited chrome. Part of the reason I didn't buy a whole ton of 1/2 inch chrome is they're pretty expensive. And if these get the job done, I'm just not going to spend a ton of money on the 1/2 inch chrome when the 1/2 inch impact work okay. And I definitely need the 1/2 inch impact for the impact gun, right? So if we were to do an overview, I start with my 1/4 inch. Anybody know what tool brand this is?
No,
You guys ever heard of SK?
no.
They used to be really popular back in the day. They're still around. You can buy them. We had another tool truck at my first dealer who sold SK stuff. So I was like, let me look at the set. Why I love this set was it was metric, it was standard, it was in a lid that I could close. And when I was first starting out, I didn't have two sets. I'd bring it to work, I'd bring it home, I'd bring it to work. I'd be working at work and then I'd bring it home and do all my own little projects and side stuff, right? So I love the SK set. I have an SK 1/4. I have a 3/8, but now that I have more than enough tools, I actually started keeping the 3/8 in my truck. So you guys saw my truck last week under the seat. Now I'm telling you, so if it goes missing, I know it was you. Under the seat, there's a 3/8 SK set. It's all closed up. So if my truck breaks, I could pull it out from under the seat and it's all there, right? And then it was similar with the 1/2 inch. The SK stuff was pretty nice. This I have. That 24 I actually lost. I know exactly where I lost it, and I haven't replaced it because if I need a 24, I got a 24. But came with a swivel. Swivel was a cool little detail. Part of the reason I liked it too was it was 12 point. I don't normally need 12 point, but if I do, at least I have 10 to 19 to 24 in 12 points. So that served me pretty well. And then what do you think the main use is? You think you're going to use 1/4 inch more or 1/2 inch more or 3/8 more?
3/8, pretty
probably.
common.
3/8.
Now you know why my 3/8 is snap-on, because I broke a lot of SK stuff. And then it was sort of like, you know what? I could probably justify an upgrade. So I bought the snap-on 3/8 because I was breaking things all the time. Cool. And I bought a different organizer so I can get at them quick, right? So 8, if I need a 14, I'll pull it like this. Now, in my old toolbox, this is a little too tall, so I cut the tops off. So you can't read the upper numbers. You can read the lower ones, but I like to keep it organized. And then what do you think the difference between this is and this is? Give you a clue.
Metric and standard.
Metric.
Right. You guys may have no use for the standard, but when I started, I was running into some standard stuff. So remember how I told you I bought a SK 3/8 set? Well, I did. And I took all the standard out and I put it on rails in here. So that SK starter set I got is still my number one standard set. It's just for the metric, because I rarely use those. You can see, I mean, some of these are like brand new. That just tells you, I mean, in fact, I'm not sure that one's ever been used, and I've owned this since I was, I think, 16 or 17.
Don't most European cars have standard sockets to use?
No. Nope. Everything you're gonna see is gonna have metric unless it's an American or like a English, and that would probably be 80s or older. So if it's a 55 Chevy, standard. If it's a 76 Ford, standard. If it's a 97 GMC, no, metric. If it's a 2005 Buick, metric. So like, even when I started, there'd be occasionally, like if you look my 9/16 has definitely been used. And so, and probably actually the reason I use that is probably because I broke my 14 and I started using 9/16 because they're so close. But some of this stuff is really unused. I'm not sure if I was in your shoes, I would even buy standard, but it depends on what you're going to work on. If you want to work on cool American, European, like not German, but like more like Western European stuff that's English, it might use standard, but probably not real likely. All right, and you can see that these are impacts that are standards. Some of these have been used. Some more than others. Like a 7/8 is actually pretty close to a 22. So if I ever have a problem with a 22, I'll use that. 3/4 is close to a 19. But a lot of these, just as standard, I haven't used a lot, but I need them because I work on weird stuff sometimes. Axle sockets are nice to have. I bought the whole set. That one is not missing. That one is over where my motorcycle is. So I know where every tool is. Every tool. This was the cool thing. What the heck is this socket?
Swivel.
It's a swivel spark plug socket.
Oh,
So I got 1/2 inch swivel impacts. I got 3/8 swivel impacts shallow, 3/8 swivel deep, 1/4 inch, not swivel, but universal. See how they're a different design? It's not a ball and socket. It's a universal. So these are not strong, but you can get into some really cool spots, which is why I got them in quarter.
What brand is that one?
This is also SK. I remember these.
hmm.
Yeah, because I was getting a really good deal on the SK stuff back in the day, and I took pretty good advantage of my student discount. I spent like about $5,000, but you're not going to buy every tool you need when you're as a student. So then I started buying other stuff. Like for example, these are Sunex. Sunex makes actually some of the sockets for some of the companies, but my Sunex have been good. So I've used this socket. I don't think I've ever replaced it either. This is a 22. I was using this on Chevys for years and years and years. My 21, you see, these are still in pretty good shape. Snap-on Matco sockets are really good. Sunex was like 1/4 of the price, and they're old. And trust me, they've been used. But they don't make swivels, so I did get the Snap-on swivel impacts. And some of these, like I believe these I bought on OfferUp, or I think it was before OfferUp. I think I got these on like Craig's. I might have got them on eBay, and there was a couple broken ones. So when I got them and the Snap-on guy was there, I had the broken ones replaced, and now I got a nice Snap-on set without paying big retail. And I think I did the same with these and these because the swivels are really expensive. Like this is probably 500 right here, just from 8 to 19, and it doesn't even have every size. So it adds up. And then you guys know what these are?
The extended bars.
Yeah, extensions we'd normally call it. These ones are a little special because they have a wobble on the end. Or I can push it on further to the straight part, and that makes it a regular extension. But they discontinued those. I broke one and they gave me this, and I was like, oh, no, not that one. They gave me, see this one? This one's just a wobble, which allows when I let me grab a 3/8. Let's go with like the 10 just cause I'll put it on after. See, when I click this on, you notice how it's like sloppy? Well, that helps me get just a little bit of an angle. So I like the wobble. But the thing is, it's always a wobble. It kind of sucks because the old ones, before they discontinued them, and I heard they came back, but I'm not sure. Let me go with like this one. These, if I put it on there, it's a wobble, but if I push it further, it's a straight. So these were cool, but they're either discontinued or maybe they're back, but they definitely were discontinued at one point. Cool. So that's extension sockets. Now, what the heck's going on here? What do you want to call these?
Drill bits?
Torque bit.
Oh,
Not, they don't look like Torx.
Oh, they're
They're
Allen.
hex, right?
Yeah. This is Torx. This is Hex or Allen. You can call either one. Allen actually was a tool brand. So if I look at this one, this is a 10 mm Allen socket. Different than an Allen wrench, which I'll show you. And this side is standards. This, I believe, is a 3/8. 3/8. And that was a Matco set. Matco did a special on that, and boom, I jumped on it. Cool. And then the Torx I have are Mac. You notice this one's missing. That was one of the things that I broke and I gave to the student saying, hey, I think it was Matco ratchet, flex head, and and this is a Mac. Well, I broke it. These are tamper proof. That's why it's got the hole in there. They tend to be weaker, but I can get into anything, even if it's supposed to be tamper proof or tamper resistant. So Torx is like a star, but if you call it a star, you're acting like a homeowner. If you're a professional technician, this is Torx, Torx. If
Torque bit.
this is, yeah, Torx, not just torque, Torx,
What
right?
about the E sockets up there?
There you go. So if it's external Torx, it looks like this. See, it's exactly the opposite of a Torx. You definitely want to get some e-Torx. I believe I bought these separate, but now they're making a pretty nice set with like tamper-proof Torx, non-tamper-proof Torx. Like this is a non-tamper-proof Torx right here. And then the e-Torx all as a set's a good idea. Now check this out. You might be surprised. Yeah, that's a Mac one, but you might be really surprised at this. Look at this. This was the first Torx set I bought, and it's a T30, I think. That's how you size it. Oh yeah, this is look at that brand. You ever seen something like that? I
Nope.
got it at Walmart. I bought it at
I've seen that.
Walmart, all right? I've come clean with you. Now you know it's a T50. My first torque set came from Walmart. And then when I was exploding these Stanleys, like the 55 I definitely killed and the 45 I killed. The T50 didn't get that much use. I was like, I can't be running Stanley. I did buy a few Stanley things, but they just didn't hold up, right? So I'm speaking from firsthand. Some of the more high-end stuff will last. Some of this Walmart stuff won't last. The SK's actually been pretty good stuff, but I have had some of these warranted before. Now I'm not even sure how to warranty it. I wouldn't tell anyone to buy SK because I don't know how you get it replaced if it breaks. But I still like their stuff. And then for these were Sunex as well. And this one was straight off of Amazon. The reason I have it, it's 14, 12-point spark plug socket because somebody needed me to work on a Mini Cooper. And I was like, if I'm going to work on a Mini Cooper and I'm going to spend $50 on the socket, it's not worth it. So I'm just going to buy a super cheap one. That's where that one came from, and that's where it's going to live. And then different ratchets, Snap-on Flex, Mac. These are kind of old, but like back in the day when I was in school, all the ones that have this type of handle, that's what I was buying on student discount because that was hot. Like this was the coolest handle back in the day. Now it's outdated, but I don't care. I like the breaker bar. Here is a crow's foot. So let's go with the 19 crow's foot. This is either
I have
19
seen
or
that before. I just didn't know the correct term.
Yep, that's a crow's foot.
Yeah,
And so
I've
some
seen
of this, you got to know the name. So if you need something, you can be like, hey, can I borrow a crow's foot? You can't be like, hey, can I borrow the thing? The chingy thingy? You know what I'm saying? Need the name. So the crow's foot's cool. You'll see on the packet. If I need to get on an AC line or a power steering line or something, this crow's foot would be really good. You can get them in sneaky spots. You can even put an extension on it and use a ratchet. They're nice to have. This was a sensor socket set, and you'll notice something like this is customized. This is a O2 sensor socket, and I couldn't get it into a manifold. So I actually, you see what I did, right? See how I made this thinner wall?
Yeah, you shaved it down, you grinded it?
But didn't I compromise the strength?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, but I don't care. I needed to get the job done. All right. So if
Definitely.
that breaks and I get hurt, I got nobody to blame, but I'm just saying what I did. These are for problem bolts. And then if I ever round a bolt off, like if I strip the head, these are the twist extractors. This will help get a stripped head bolt out. Not if the threads are stripped, but just the heads, right? So I keep all this stuff right here. Then these are little inserts. These came from, this was actually below Harbor Freight. It came from it was like a little group of people that went around and sold tools, right? But that's a 12. I can pop this in the socket and it'll make the socket magnetic. So I got them, but I rarely use them. They sell the sockets you can buy magnetic now, so that'd probably be the way to go. Cool. So we'll take a look. That's the socket drawer. That's where you're gonna spend most of your money. This is just the most expensive stuff. Oh, anybody know what these are?
Fork sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this. Never been used. But I bought the whole set because I wanted the whole set. This one's been used a lot because it's 21 millimeters and I think 85 foot-pounds or 80. I think it's 80. So this would be good for like, I would use this on a Toyota. I was using it a lot on Kias. This is gonna, to some extent, limit the amount of torque coming out of the gun. So that way I'm pretty close and I can just do a quick like final torque check, right? If I do my impact gun with one of these, it's probably gonna overshoot it unless I just do it lightly. So I did like the torque sticks. I don't use them so much anymore because I'm not doing that many. But when I was doing a bunch of cars a day, it made sense. All right, next drawer. What's all this junk?
Needle nose pliers.
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 Okay, yeah. So what would you call these?
I call those
Diagonal.
strips.
Diagonal cutters.
Yeah, diagonal cutters. So if you go on the tool catalog, you could know all the slang and stuff, but like you gotta sort of know like the proper names. Make sense?
Pliers.
Needle nose, right? This a lot of times they'll call a combination plier because it could be here or you could slip it. Sometimes they'll call it a slip joint or a combination. Cool. Then if we skip away over to here, what would you call this? Anybody for channel locks?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That's a brand though. This is Matco arc joint pliers. However, if you say channel locks, I got you. But understand, channel lock was the brand that made the arc joint plier. And these, you want to know where this one is? See how it's missing? When I'm gone, my wife can't open the milk, the plastic almond milk that we got. And so I told her, hey, you know what? You really need a nice set of pliers. And so they're in my kitchen right there, right there. In fact, I'm probably going to take them back. Like, you get your own pliers, right? Some precision pliers, nipping pliers. They actually call these lineman pliers. Look at these pliers. These are the most beat up pliers I have. You know why?
Use them a lot.
I didn't use them on cars as much as when I started doing my driveway. These are really good for tying rebar. So I tied a bajillion tons of rebar and I was also spraying the ground to get it like compacted and I got them wet and they're rusty. Now, if I went to Mac and I'd be like, hey, these are beat up, they'd replace them. But they still work fine. So I'm going to run it. Right. So those were cool. Ooh, what about these are something you'll never see. These are safety wire pliers. These you can put wire on, like, let's say a drain plug or something that has a hole drilled in it and clamp them with this little lock and then pull this handle and they'll actually spin. I don't know if I can get it to do it, but if you ever see something that's safety wired, like with some fleet stuff or some race stuff, those are safe. You can also just twist the wire, but these could make it really fast. So I bought those. What about these? Anybody know?
Wire stripper.
Yeah, strippers here, crimpers here. All right, but who thinks they know what brand this is? Because these are Mac, these are Matco, these are Snap-on. What the heck is this thing? It's like Halloween.
Klein?
Cornwell.
Close, close.
Cornwell.
These are T&B is Thomas and Betts. This is the top of the line stripper crimper right here. The Matco Snap-on, those they're trash. This is a nice piece. So one time I was doing a wire repair on an electrician's truck and he's like, what are you using for that? And I showed him like my whatever basic wire strippers, crimpers, and he's like, use mine. And he busts out Thomas and Betts, and I'm like, oh dang. Klein is a nice brand though too. Klein makes some really nice stuff. This is a terminal crimper. I believe, yeah, see, I believe this one was one I got on Amazon. Yeah. So some of the stuff is cheap. This is actually spark plug wire pliers, and it's got a grounding element so that I cannot get shocked because I hate getting shocked. Some of these are specialty hose clamp pliers. The only negative is though, and these are made by Mayhew. So another different brand. The only negative is they kind of need a cable, but they still work, so I'm still using them. And then these, what do you call these?
Vice grips.
Correct, because they're Vice Grip brand. But if they were Matco brand, they would not be Vice Grips because these are a Vice Grip brand. Made by Irwin, by the way. Irwin makes Vice Grip. See that, Irwin? They make Vice Grip. The locking pliers, but whatever. I'm cool with Vice Grips. That's fun. All right, next drawer. What would you say this junk is?
Pry bar?
Definitely some pry bars and some other things. Oh,
Screwdrivers?
All right, screwdrivers. I just saw a time, so I'll hustle it up. Precision screwdrivers. This was a big SK set. Torx drivers. My nicer screwdriver set, this was kind of my beater set that I'll occasionally hit with a hammer, but I keep the tips on these really nice. And these ones are here, they're just over there. These, what do you think about this?
What are those for?
Allen head screwdriver?
Like
Something
a
like that.
Yeah,
Rounded
exactly.
tip Allen.
socket screwdriver?
Yeah, the reason I liked it though, look at that drive on there. I could put a 1/4 inch wrench on it and really break stuff
Oh, that's
loose, but then I
amazing.
could make it pretty fast. This was kind of a janky brand, Easy Red, but they're warranty for life. I just don't know where I'd get them warranted anymore. Yeah, pry bars, gasket scrapers, hook, precision ratchet set, really small. More kind of like screwdriver bits, but I don't really use the screwdriver. Files, picks, most of which have been replaced. Some pocket screwdrivers, courtesy of O'Reilly's, and also freebie Snap-on stuff. This is not warranty for life. Trim tools, cool. Lots of stuff. How about wrenches, adjustables, long double box end, offset, pretty cool. Line wrenches or flare nut wrenches, Allen's, but not Allen sockets, but Allen wrenches or keys. Allen wrench sometimes. All my metric wrenches, all my standard wrenches. Remember, I told you I shopped at Walmart. Stanley, I bought them when I was a kid, and you know what? For standard, they're fine, and I still use them. Pipe wrenches because I like to play plumber. The gear wrenches that have locking and not locking. Gear wrenches that are stubby gear wrenches. Those are
Oh,
pretty
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Gear wrench, battery wrench specifically for old domestics. This is usually when something goes wrong drawer. Something's wrong, I have to tap. Something's wrong, I have to die. Something's wrong, I have to thread chase. Something's wrong, I have to extract. Something's wrong, I got to use my impact screwdriver. I got to punch it or chisel it. I got to puller it. I got to puller it. I got extractors and left-hand drill bits. I got pullers, power steering pulley puller, rivet guns, seal puller, and this one's an adjustable 3 holes. That one's pretty cool. I forgot who made this one, but that's the thing. I'll buy the stuff like that's Astro. I'll buy the stuff from whatever the best deal is. Hole saws, big drill bits, only if something gets really messed up, right? So I'm always looking for the deal that's gonna make the most sense. And then a lot of hammers, one of which is broken in half. So I should get that fixed. But I gotta catch the Snap-on guy. That's the thing. They will warranty this because it's Snap-on. Even some body hammers, air tools, air hammer, 1/4 inch air ratchet. Pretty cool pickle fork that you can chuck right into a air hammer. Air
Which are
drill.
better, air or battery?
Back in my day, air was the only option. Battery was junk, but the battery stuff's pretty nice. But the air hammer is the ticket. A battery powered hammer is no, I'm not impressed. And this is my first one, and I killed it. All right, this is a low profile right hand drill. And I've got some right hand drill bits in another drawer, a cutoff wheel. Here's my right hand small drill bits. These are really cool. These are stubbies. The reason I have this is if I break something off in a really tight spot, I can get it to be really short and sneak it out of there, like an exhaust manifold or something.
Yeah, that's
I'm
real cool.
buying stuff. I need an air file. And then my bottom drawer catches a lot of stuff. Torque wrenches and cases, a big old scary adjustable wrench if I work on some, a custom made wrench. This is actually how I tightened down my house to its foundation. I custom made that one. And that was fun. It didn't get a torque spec, puller set, brake pad stuff, big 3/4 drive. So like, look at the size of some of that, just in case. Cool. And then of course, when I drop my bolts, here's my magnet. Just keep it magneted there. So that's a little overview of some of the stuff we got to cover, you guys. So hopefully it's been pretty fun.
Lots of